Brothers of the Serpent podcast. Dead seriousness. All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons and monsters and serpents, it is Brothers of the Serpent podcast coming to you unplugged from the 10x10x10 Tangent Cube of Science, proving that we did indeed make this music. Unplugged. Tangent Cube of Science unplugged. That's right. Hey, kick up your volume a bit there, buddy.
Oh, me? What?
Your volume on your I can't hear you very well. It's all right.
Our acoustics shit is just, it's really loud, but it's getting quiet.
I can hear me great, but I can't hear you at all.
All right.
Sorry, should I have waited on that?
No.
That's my bad.
All right, let me see. What's going on with me here? Anyway, I'll figure this out.
All right. We're still recording?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, cool. Well, yeah, it's episode 31. It is a new year, and got some interesting things to talk about. We had some feedback from some listeners, so we're going to talk about. Well, at least I want to ask Kyle about.
How's that?
That's way better.
Okay.
Yeah, way better. I want to ask Kyle about dyslexia. Like he had a little bit of that when he was young, and I don't really know if
No,
he
I
still
didn't.
He hides it really well, except for when he's telling you some numbers and they're all backwards. You're like, dude,
That's bulltish.
But what I want to know from you first of all is like, what is it like? What happens in your head? Like, you know, you talked about seeing the sign earlier, and you were saying like you just look at it and you know that it's like, you know, it's like free parking, but for some reason when you go to say it, you say parking free. Like, what is happening? Like, you know.
Yeah, I've tried to recognize like certain, like to see if there's like patterns in it.
Yeah.
Or it's like I can't really explain it, but sometimes if I look at a word that's or a couple of words or even a sentence, if words being switched, if you switch some words in there or switch some letters in a word and it made sense that way,
Right.
it'll just happen.
Okay,
Right?
so you mean if you switch the letters and it still is a word?
Yeah,
Okay.
it doesn't. It's never total bullshit. It's never like these words are backwards and it doesn't make sense.
Okay.
So like in a short sentence, like some sign. I wish I could remember what the sign said. It was like two words,
Yeah.
and for some reason the two words were like funny to me, and I say them out loud.
Okay.
Like I'm driving by myself and I see it, and I'm like, you know, blah 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 or whatever.
Yeah.
But when I say the words, they're backward. Like the words, like the two words are in reverse. Like I say the second word first and the first word second.
But you don't realize it's
But
going to happen until...
Yeah, but it's like that arrangement was what was funny.
Oh.
But
Okay,
but the fucking sign had the words the other way,
Yeah.
which was not funny. And I was like, oh shit. Like,
So
and
that's
then
why you're laughing at it, but you don't realize until after you say them. You're like, wait.
Right, but then in my head, like in my mind's eye, when I think, like when I looked at the sign, I see them the correct way.
Yeah.
And it's like, why did I see them back? Why did I? It's like, I see
Yeah.
them the correct way, but I just imagine them backwards. And,
Yeah.
and
you're
laugh.
laughing at that. Yeah.
So that can happen within a word too. Like if a word's spelling, if the spelling within the word can be rearranged to be a different word.
like an anagram or something.
Just, I don't know.
Like, yeah, when you mix them up and it's a different word. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if they can be swapped or whatever and make a different word, I'll see that word sometimes.
No, okay. Wow,
Instead of the other one. But, and then it gets even weirder. Like, if there's a sentence and one of the words in the sentence can be, the letters can be rearranged, and the sentence makes sense, I can sometimes see it that way.
Oh, wow, that's
And so,
fascinating.
like, a lot of times it very often happens in the form of humor where I'll see something and it's like funny or like interesting to me for some reason.
Yeah.
And then I say it, or I take it, you know, have a double take or whatever,
Yeah.
and realize like, no, it's
No.
actually not that.
That's really interesting.
So
That
it's
you're like,
never-
you look at it and you start laughing and you're like, wait, it's not that I thought
Yeah,
was funny.
there's never a case where I see a sentence or a word or whatever that they're just jumbled.
Okay.
And they don't make sense. It always makes sense the wrong way.
Okay, yeah. I got you. So you in other words, like, you're not going to transpose letters or whatever to make something that can't be read, that's not an actual word.
Yeah.
or move words around and have
Right.
it to where they're
I never look at a word and see just jumbled letters.
okay. So
It's always a real word or something that makes sense in the context of whatever it is.
now I wonder if that's because because this is my next question. I remember that when you were very young, it would sometimes manifest as mirror, like you would actually write.
Yeah, I wrote letters backwards too.
Right, but they were mirrored, which is So like you know.
Well, when you write it, when you
Yeah,
write
yeah.
a letter backwards, it's
right. So
it's mirrored.
that, like, I'm trying to figure out how.
But I would write my name, but then it's like I'd put the letters
in the correct order.
the correct order, but the letters would be reversed.
Right.
Like the letters in themselves would be mirrored, or sometimes like I would write my name backwards.
Yeah. Sometimes the K would start on the right, and it would go.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing this, and like I always.
It's an E. The first letter is an E. Russ.
It is if you're starting from the left.
It doesn't matter. If you're starting from the left, the first letter's an E. So when I wrote my name backwards, it was right.
My whole childhood just got rearranged in my mind.
Yeah, so it's there, and then it'll happen with numbers too. Very seldomly, it's mostly with letters, but sometimes I'll see, like I'll look at a number, and this happens very
And
seldom.
that must be harder because there's not necessarily sense there. You're looking at 8, 4, 5, 6 or whatever, and you start, and those get switched around, and it doesn't.
Yeah, but that's extremely rare.
Okay.
Like if I look at somebody's phone number and am writing it down or whatever, it's usually I don't. There's very few times when I can imagine like I've looked at a number, written it down, and it was wrong, and I wasn't able to use it.
Okay.
Like for some reason,
do
it's.
you think that's because you check it, double check it, triple check it?
I have no idea. But like even when I'm dealing with numbers at work and shit all the time, measurements, all that kind of stuff, they always seem to be okay.
Okay.
And if I make a mistake, it's not a dyslexia mistake.
Okay.
It's usually some other like.
So you're left-handed, and I've always wondered like if that has something to do with it. That because in my
brain is
in my
backwards?
well in my child brain, in my mind, as a kid, I would see these letters that you had written that were mirrored, and I would think to myself, well, that makes sense because he's writing with his left hand.
Yeah, I'm going the other way.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're going the other direction. Like everything is mirrored, But obviously that doesn't really work. But
I don't know if the people teaching me are writing with their right hands and they're making a symbol, and it's like if you orient the symbol to the body, then it would make sense that I was writing this exact same way. I was making the same motions.
Right, but you're just
mirrored.
doing right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like that was
But
what
I don't
made,
know.
That's what made sense to me at the time. But it was interesting to me because
Is Kmart left-handed?
I don't know. Maybe.
Kmart. Are you left? Wait, this isn't live. Damn it.
Kmart. I was just talking to him.
I was thinking like if this was live, I could be like Kmart, are you left-handed? And he'd
Yeah.
send me a message.
Yeah. Well, I can ask him shit. But this was interesting to me because I also was an artist. I drew stuff as a kid like all the time. So I was always interested in the shapes of things, and I would try to pay attention to the details and shapes of things. And so that was how I learned letters at first, was I was drawing them, right? I think everybody probably does that. When you're learning how to write, you look at the A, and then you draw that. You're like, okay, it's got this weird point thing, and then there's a line going across, and it's kind of in the middle or maybe higher than the middle. So you try to draw that. Now, obviously, you can't. You write an A mirrored, and it's the same thing. So that one doesn't work. But if you're doing a B, right? So it's got a straight line on the left, and then it's got these two bulges on the right.
Yeah.
For me to look at that and see if someone has drawn it in a mirror, I'm like, how did that happen?
Okay,
without noticing.
I remember learning to write the letters, and there was a specific stationery that Mom got.
Okay.
Right, and it's big, and it has the dotted line in the middle.
Yeah. Yeah. I know
So the dotted line helps you
right
with the middle of a B or the line across the A,
Right.
and then there's like
It's where
all
to put the lowercase letters go below it.
yeah, all the letters of the alphabet are on one line, and then beneath that you have the blank lined area with the dotted line in the middle, and you copy all the capitals, you copy all the lowercase. I didn't write those backwards because I was copying. It's later from memory when I'm carving my name into the stairs of the house.
Yes, this is why I remember this, folks, because at some point we switched rooms, and I spent the rest of the time we were in that house in what was previously his room, and he had carved his name into the stairs that went up into the loft. So I saw them every fucking day for like 10 years backwards
Fucked
in
your mind
reverse.
up,
That's right. And I'm like,
You were like, my brother is fucking
his name
insane.
his name is Alec.
It's like my fucking eBay. My eBay name is Nella Siluelic. That's my name.
That's right.
Nella Siluelic. I read that. It's like the whole thing is backwards. It's my username.
Alec.
Nella Siluelic.
But it fascinated me. I'd sit there and look at it and be like, how did that happen? Because you drew the K perfectly. It was just a mirrored version of it.
Yeah.
So it's like...
And then like one of them was not backwards.
Right. Yeah. One of the, I think the lowercase e in that particular one was not backwards. So it was, and of course the L, you can't. It was just a line, you know. So it's like the K, uppercase K was on the right and in reverse.
I think the L was backwards. It was a capital probably. Then I probably threw in, the right, correct facing E.
Don't tell me what it would look like. I looked at it every day for fucking.
I still can't ever figure out which way the Y is supposed to go. Because some people draw them with a straight line. And you're like, God, which way is that?
Yeah. It's always the second one, but which one did you draw second? That's how I think of it.
I don't ever write anything backwards. When I'm writing down stuff, it's like, it's not backwards. Like I used to when I was a kid. But the only time the dyslexia sort of manifests is when I'm... It's usually when I'm...
It really is.
How do I say this? It's like if I'm going to speak something that I just looked at, like, and it's usually, I mean, it mostly happens with like a sign or something.
Right. So you just glance at it and you.
Yeah, I glance at it and I'm like blah blah blah, and I say what I read.
Yeah.
It'll be like I'll say it backwards, and it's usually really short or one word in there I've just like messed up.
Yeah.
And like I know this has happened with you before, where we're like driving down the street and I see a billboard and I'm like, blah blah blah, and then you're like, what? And I'm like, oh shit, never mind. That's
Yeah.
that's not what that says.
I'm looking around for the. Where is he seeing that? I see something really close to that, but it's not. No. What? Okay, but
It's really what's really mean is the word that fucking scientists decided was going to mean this phenomenon.
yeah.
It's like
It's a bad one to use.
It's like
yeah.
that's really fucked up, dude.
Yeah.
Of you to name this thing what
That
you
word,
named it.
yeah.
So the people that have it have to try to say that all the time.
And spell it.
Yeah.
I don't have it. I don't have it, and I still spell that word wrong. It must be based off of Latin or whatever, though. I'm sure.
Well, it's Lexia, right?
yeah, lexicon as in writing, and dis, which is wrong. Or
Yeah, it's just fucking mean, man.
yeah. It just means you wrote wrong. But so what do you think is happening in the brain? Like, again, are we coming back to the thing that I can never remember the name of, the corpus something or other, the wire that crosses the two hemispheres?
I don't know. That's why I was pointing out that it never doesn't make sense. It's double negative there. It always makes sense.
It never does it not make.
Now, that's for me. Like it always makes sense. Whatever the jumbled up or reversed or whatever makes sense the other way.
Oh,
So-
do you think that's when you? Well, no.
Because like Kmart was pointing out that he will sometimes say things backwards, like switch the syllables in a word or something like that. And I hear people do that all the time.
Yeah.
That's not called dyslexia, as far as I know.
Okay.
People just fuck up shit when they're saying something.
Yeah.
You know,
Let me see if I can pull up what he said here.
they people just shuck up fit.
I can't even do it. Like I'm like, how would a dyslexic person say this? And I don't even know. I always mess it up. Let's see. It's just Kmart. There he is. Okay, he said, it's funny that we catch it every time. I've even spoken ass backwards before. Putting a word beforehand mid-sentence and completing the sentence or phrase. It's like your brain knows exactly what you're trying to say, but the connection is lost and regained afterwards subconsciously. And consciously we realize we made the mistake.
Yeah, see, I think, like, in my experience, pretty much everyone I know has reversed syllables in words before, but that to me is
Just a
that's
mistake.
like a mistake in speaking. Like you're thinking faster than you're speaking, obviously, and you're trying to get through something, and people,
Go with courage.
you know, it's the same thing. Like where people will be talking about, someone will be talking about two different people, and they'll be using their proper names.
Right.
And when they go to say the thing that one person said, they give the other person's name.
Yeah. I hear that.
Right.
Yeah.
They're saying so and so said this, and then so and so said that.
Right.
But they switch the two people's names.
Right. Because all those are all like nouns. All these nouns or whatever, and they're in your head, and they're part of the story, and
but if it was
misplace one. Yeah.
If it was written down, they wouldn't do it.
Right.
They just did it because they're going.
Yeah.
fast,
It's on the fly.
Yeah. So from what I'm saying is that I do that too. I don't associate that with dyslexia, and you've done that.
Yeah.
Everybody that I know has done that, and it's usually funny when you do it.
Yeah.
But the dyslexia.
Like,
thing
no.
is
You
like,
meant this, and you're like, oh, did I say? Oh shit.
I'm
yeah.
actually looking at words written down, and like let's say it's top down, like it's words stacked on top of each other, and you would read it in a downward direction
from top to bottom. Yeah.
Sometimes I will see like the second word first, and then the first word, and then the last two or whatever.
Okay. Yeah. So they're not all reversed.
Yeah, it's not like it's not. What's the word for it? It doesn't matter what direction. So if you're reading down, like the top word can be the bottom, and the bottom word the top.
You're not keeping them sequential. You mean it's not a complete reversal,
right? But they're usually not. Let's say if it was like 4 or 5 words top down, I wouldn't have the last word first. It would usually be two that are next to each other be switched.
Flipped. Okay.
And they could be left to right switched, or top to bottom switched.
So the other thing he says about
But like I said, it always makes sense, which is what makes me think it's.
Maybe that's when you don't catch it first. Like, I was just wondering about that. Like, when it makes sense is when you don't realize it. You know what I'm saying? Like, where does it ever? In other words, does it ever happen? You're like, no, that's not right.
No.
Okay.
That's what I'm trying to say. Is that it? I never look at a word where the letters are rearranged and it's just bullshit. It just doesn't. It's not a word. It's always an actual word, but the letters are rearranged and it's not the word that's written.
Yeah. So he says, I'll be writing down a word mid-sentence or writing down a series of numbers for work. And I repeat literally what I've seen and go to record the numbers or data, and all the numbers are there but mixed up. And I know this because I'm not an idiot. Same with writing. I guess it makes me a better drummer. But yeah, it's like that's what he
should have played the fucking hi-hat there, man. Hitting the tom.
Yeah, I think you're hitting the snare where the bass is supposed to go.
I've had drummers do that. Like I'll play a rhythm for them, and the drummer will start playing, and they put all the snare hits where the kick, bass drum hits should go. And usually it's, that's a 1 and 3. There's 4 beats in the measure, and kick is the first thing.
Yeah. Da. Yeah.
1.
They start
3.
out.
1, 3, and they'll start playing, and the 1, they're putting the 1 where the 3 should go.
Right.
And I'm like, no, dude, you got this wrong. Like, you're fucking obviously rhythmically dyslexic. Dysrhythmic or whatever.
Dysrhythmically dyslexic. Something.
Con.
Yeah, I wish we had the show observer here because he probably had some input on some, maybe the the sort of biology medical guy input on this, like what's happening. Even if he didn't know, he'd probably have like 4.5 hours of stuff to say about it.
Yeah. So I would assume that there are different levels of it and different degrees of like how severe it is with people.
Yeah,
like some
certainly.
people can't. Some people cannot
function.
read because it's just all mixed up all the time. Now, when I write numbers, it doesn't happen. Not that I can recall, but when I go to write the name of something or letters down, sometimes I'll start with the wrong letter. I usually it's not often in the middle, and I don't ever write the wrong word first.
Okay.
Or maybe I do, but the letter that I start with is not the right letter.
No, yeah.
Maybe it was the first letter of the second word, and I'm like, no.
Yeah.
That's no. So maybe that's what he's talking about. Like he starts writing numbers and he's not an idiot, so he realizes like, no, that's not the right fucking number.
Yeah, I know the order of these numbers, and that isn't it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. That's just fascinating to me. Like the whole concept of like where it's like in your mind you know it, but when you go to start writing it down and you're watching yourself writing it wrong, you're like, no, that isn't right.
It's like I need some PVC. V. No, no, damn it. P.
Yeah.
VC.
Yeah, or you start with N and you're like, no, that's need. I.
Does that ever happen to you?
That has happened and that'll be, well, to me it feels like it's because I'm thinking in my mind, I'm like, okay, I need to write this down, and I start with the first letter of the word that I'm thinking,
yes,
as opposed to the first letter of the beginning of the sentence.
That's what I'm saying. Those things are difficult. Like when I'm writing stuff, sometimes I start with the wrong letter because it's the letter of the word I was thinking of that I really needed to start back before.
Yeah. Like, where am I going? You start with G. No, it's a W.
Yeah.
Going. Yeah.
Then I screwed up things like IE and EI in a lot of words when I would write because I didn't know how they were spelled. I'm a terrible I can't fucking spell. Like, I've always thought I can't spell. Like, I just don't spell right. Well, so thank God for autocorrect. Except I hate it.
A fucking auto cucumber.
Yeah. And tie is like a frequent occurrence in my autocorrect.
Oh.
Tie. No, it's the THE, not TYE. Damn it!
That's right, because it's pulling it from your contacts.
I get so mad about that. It's like it puts Ty in like everything. I've sent Ty's name to so many people.
So I was going Ty the Lake, or going Ty Lake. No, I was not Ty.
Going to Ty Lake.
Yeah. Did you get Ty guitar? God damn it! Yeah. I guess it's pulling it from your contacts.
I don't know, but
I mean, like most autocorrect,
I should just delete him from
the
my
dictionary.
contacts.
Asks you, can it look at your contacts and your emails and everything to pull to?
It's never asked me that.
Oh well,
it probably was like
it just did.
It was like, hey, can contacts me look at? And I was like, oh yeah, sure.
Can contacts look at me? Sure. I don't know why
I don't give a shit about that. And okay. Most of the times that I realize this, and I always associate it with driving because when I'm reading like billboards and stuff, and they're always very short, to the point.
Does that happen with bumper stickers?
I don't
see those often enough.
Man, yeah, I don't
sticker bumpers.
That. But yeah, signs. It always happens with signs, and signs are things that I would read out loud immediately after seeing it.
Yeah.
Like,
you're like, look at that. Yeah. That was a habit we picked up on our road trips.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like after you've been driving for 20 hours and you're going through the desert, you're starved for something. And, like any kind of input that isn't like white lines moving past you really fast and flat, rocky desert. So you see a sign and everybody looks at it.
I'm like, dude, lawyer whore fire. Shit. No, that's lawyer for hire. Never mind. I get really excited about the other meaning.
Lawyer horfire. Yeah. I would laugh at that one too.
Dude, check this out. Lawyer horfire. 1-800. Oh, wait.
What?
That's lawyer for hire. My bad.
That's great. By the way, this just reminded me. You remember driving 10? We were driving down 10, head west. And somewhere out there in the middle of nowhere, you start seeing these signs that say, The Thing.
Yeah.
Did you ever go see The Thing? You ever go see The Thing?
No,
No. Yeah. Okay. Because I know you went out there.
We pulled up one time and went in, and
it was like,
$10. Yeah, we went down there and like, was I with you or with Laura?
I know I wanted to stop, so maybe we did. It was $10.
I don't remember. I just remember that finally I was like, let's fucking do this, and we turned down the road and we followed the sign and we got to this place and it was like, oh, The Thing.
Yeah.
And we got there, and I was assuming it was that that massive rock on the front of the album.
Oh yeah. The Fire.
What's the name of that?
The Flame Rock.
Yeah.
And STP.
Audio Slave.
Yeah.
I was like, man, that's got to be it. That's the thing. And I want to see it.
Yeah.
But we went down there and it was like a weird building, and they were just trying to charge you a fee to like go into the building where they had some.
I found
probably
out,
like a giant.
I found out what it is. Yeah. It's a mummy of a.
That's right.
It's a mummy, not a mummy. It is a mummified corpse of a very, 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 very tall female holding a baby.
God dang it! I should have done it.
I know. I thought the same thing when I found that out. I was like, holy shit! Like I need to go look at this because it's anomalous. That's why they call it The Thing. It's
giants.
Yeah, it's basically a it's a Nepha. I mean, I don't know if it's a long head, but it's a very tall.
But there's a weird thing, like the way people, I guess,
She was found walled into. I'm just going to say that she was found walled into a canyon. By the way.
Yeah, I'm just saying that the way that they market that kind of stuff, like the freak show, all that kind of shit, it's very circusy.
Yeah.
And it just turns me off. I'm just like, no, this is just bullshit.
Like when we went to see the Sam Squanch that was up in Austin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like they don't really want you to be able to study it. They don't really want to. It's dark room.
Yeah.
There's like they've got some crazy strange person like giving you the whole thing and all this folklore and all this crap around it.
I was like, is this guy here to distract us from?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's not oriented towards like real scientific study. Like, hey, check this out. We've got this legit fucking thing.
Yeah.
And here's where we found it, or whatever. It's always set up to be like a freak show, like the.
Yeah.
Like circus attraction type thing.
Yeah.
And nothing wrong with the circus. Circus is badass, but when you're like obsessed with finding
step right up, boy.
Shit.
Come and see the Amazing Freak Show. Only a dime. Now get out of here. You're bothering me.
But you're bothering me. It's pretty good. I like it.
Now get out of here, kid. You're bothering me.
That's awesome. Where'd you get that guy?
I don't know. That's just whenever I think of the Barker for that's what I think of. Get out of here, kid. Now you're bothering me.
Step right up.
Step right up, man. See the Freak Show. Only a dime. Now get out of here, kid. You're bothering me.
That's awesome.
That thing, this Sam Squanch guy that we went to see in Austin, that was I thought immediately when we stepped into the building, I was like, holy shit. They have a corpse in here. I mean, you could smell it. The whole place was permeated with this. And see, I knew the what would you call it, the history, the background of this thing, where it came from and how they got it. Like, and this was one of the major complaints of the person who had it before them, because he took this body and he put it into a big box deep freezer, right? And
doesn't help. Yeah.
Right. So eventually the smell, and it was in his garage. So eventually the smell got. So what he ended up doing was filling that thing with water and trying to encase it in a solid block of ice.
Doesn't help.
Still didn't help. Right. It'll permeate anyway. And that's what. As soon as we stepped in the building, I was like, holy shit. That's what it smells like. It's like the whole place had this. I mean, it wasn't overpowering, but it was a vaguely unpleasant. Like you could tell that there was something going bad in there somewhere.
Yeah, and then the guy was like, "Check this out! I can light this light bulb."
Yeah,
with my hand.
I can put this candle
by
out
using
with
this like super secret special box, and I was like, "Yeah, come on, man."
Yeah,
like it was not oriented towards like, "Hey, here's what's in the super secret special box," like a transformer.
Yeah, because you mean it was like a magician show.
Yeah. It was supposed to be like that, and I don't know.
Yeah, so we had to endure that to go see the Sam Squanch.
Right.
That was the point. Like,
and then Ty took a picture of it, even it was like no cameras allowed.
Right. Ty stuck a picture of it, which was
pretty badass.
Yeah, it was bad. It was what he did was badass, but the picture was. I mean, like you couldn't see anything. It was basically a very vague, dark shape beneath ice.
But he was pretty smart. He was like, "Can I turn a light on? Like, can I use my?" He's like, "Yeah." So Ty used his like light on his phone, and then just snapped a picture while he was doing.
Yeah,
pretty badass.
Yeah, it was great. It was a great bit of subterfuge there. But the point is that like I thought
what Ty's good at.
Yeah, and getting away with it. If I would have done it, I would have been busting through.
Yeah, we would have been thrown out.
But like that story of that thing that they paid a lot of money for it, But that was one that was this guy shot that thing up in he was elk hunting and he shot it, and like he was afraid that he had killed a man. He was afraid that because he was so human looking to him, but it was just hairy. But he after he shot it, he was like, I think I might have just shot a man, right? Yeah. And so he was terrified. He didn't want to go in.
But like his whole body was like covered in hair. And
right, but he still was like,
it's just a hairy guy.
It's a hairy dude. Yeah, he was really a tall, hairy guy. But
I would have probably thought the same thing.
And like I've heard this in lots of Sasquatch stories that the face, so you see this hairy thing that you would normally associate with some kind of like a primate or maybe even a bear standing up or whatever. They're so hairy, but the face. And even though the face is also covered in hair, the eyes and the shape of the face is so human that like once you get up to it and you see it, you're like, oh my god, that's a person. Like that's not an animal. So he was terrified that he had shot a person, but he eventually went back because he told the guy that was hunting with him. He was like, man, I didn't see any elk, but I did see this other thing that I shot, and I was worried about it. And the guy was like, well, let's go back up there and check it out. And they went up there. And I can't remember if he took his wife with him or not, but I can't remember, but I think he told her about it. But they went back, and it was still there, frozen into the ground.
Yeah.
And like they ended up chopping it out of the ground, cutting the ice, whatever, and taking it with, because the guy was like, "That's a Sam squinch, bro. You got a Sam squinch." So they took it and put it in the freezer or whatever, and then they started to take it around to shows to show it, and it was a freak show kind of deal.
So it must have died. Like,
it's very old.
It doesn't really make sense that he killed it while it was frozen, and then it would stink. Like,
no, he killed it in a cold place, and it fell down and froze to the ground.
Yeah, but I mean, what was the smell you were talking about?
The smell is the
decay, or just the smell of the guy?
Well, no, I think it's the decay. Like, it doesn't matter. It's
because if it was frozen the whole time, it wouldn't have decayed.
Yeah, it will slowly.
But
it's, dude, I'm talking about, this happened in the 60s.
Okay, yeah.
So it's very old, and like it's been decaying very, very slowly for a long time, and like, you know, and it builds up enough gases. And you got to remember that one of the main things the ice does is it keeps all the fluids in it.
Yeah.
Right. So it isn't like it mummifies, dries out, and becomes.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying that if it froze while it was like right after it died, or you know, that didn't have time to decay for the you know, the bowels and all that shit to start putrefying or whatever.
Yeah, it's just happening really slowly.
Okay.
I mean, I was gonna say
I
get the idea that you're like, that's not what would happen. I know what you're talking about, like things they find these mammoths in the tundra, and the meat's still good.
Yeah, so if it thawed, if any part of it thawed enough to like start some decay, then you're gonna get some smell, and you can't freeze that out.
Right. Yeah.
I was gonna tell this story about how I shot a skunk.
Go for it.
And I was like,
let's hear it. You shot a skunk.
I looked it up online, and it was like, oh yeah, you can clean the smell out of the skunk. And so I did the whole thing, and I was like, yeah, it actually cleaned it up pretty good. And then I froze it because I didn't have time to.
You were trying to get the pelt? Is that the idea?
Yeah, I was going to get the pelt.
Okay.
And so I froze it, and it was like a week later, the freezer smelled like skunk. You can't freeze that smell.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. But it occurred to me that, well, that's not associated with decomposition. That's just the smell.
That was the smell that was already there. Yeah. Well, the thing is that the guy who originally got it, you have to remember that he takes it and puts it in his freezer, and then he's like not satisfied with that, and so it basically ends up being storage moved several times. So I'm sure that over the course of decades, because it's been decades,
exactly, that was my point.
That it's been, you know, like you get a power outage and you're like, fuck, well, you know, if it's been 3 days.
Oh my God, the Sam squinch.
Yeah, the Sam squinch is really gonna start smelling bad, and we don't do something. You know, so
get some dry ice.
Yeah,
bro.
you're running to town buying dry ice. You're like, what are you gonna do? Like. So
yeah, that's what I meant. That there must have been a time when it was really not in the greatest condition.
Yeah, and I mean, they were taking it around and showing it too. So like it traveled at least 1 year. I think it traveled with one of the big carnival thingers or whatever. And then like he stopped because I think, did I tell this story on the podcast already? Like he goes in and a couple of. I'm trying to remember if they were doctors or if they were scientists or whatever. But anyway, these two guys with credentials in biology that understood stuff. They asked him, you know, at the show. They were like, can we take a look at it? Because they were really interested. And he was like, sure. You know, brings them in, and they were able to get like skin samples or whatever, and they were looking at it. And they were like, yeah, this is very strange. Like they couldn't. He was like, guys, you can't thaw the thing out. You know, but. We can, you know, I can like let you look at it. And so they were looking at it, and they were surprised that it was definitely like a hominid, you know, that had very sort of human features or whatever, but nevertheless was covered in hair, and like it had much longer arms than so, and then because of that sort of quote unquote verification of it, there was a flip out somewhere, and somebody ended up threatening There were threats. I can't remember all the details exactly, and I don't want to get them wrong. But basically, there were threats, and these guys ended up they were like, they got kind of freaked out, and they just disappeared. They
didn't publish their works and stuff.
Well, I'm not talking about the doctors. I'm talking about the guys who had the Sam Squanch body. So they ended up, they left the freak show and just vanished from history. Right? They just disappeared. Well, that's what was fascinating about the whole thing with. What was the name of the place in Austin?
I don't know.
We should totally give them some advertisements here, but. It's a place in Austin, so like, I think in 2012, 2013 or something like that, just out of nowhere, this thing goes up on eBay, okay? And so, you know, it's like pops up, like, I had read this story, this old story from back in the 60s or whatever, these guys went hunting. I had read the story before. And
We're coming up on time.
Yeah, so I'll finish this. A big mystery, like everybody had read, anybody interested in Sasquatch or cryptids knew about this story, and we all wondered what happened to them.
Yeah.
And so out of nowhere, just boom, comes up on eBay, and people were like, what the fuck is that? And so people started to poke into it, like, holy shit, this is that guy. This is like the answer to this mystery. Like, where did they go? What happened? They're still there. He's kept it the whole time. When he finally died,
his estate sale.
Yeah, his estate sale, and they were like, they put it up on eBay for $25,000, something like that. I can't remember what it was.
Shit.
14 grand, 25 grand. I can't remember. It was something. It was a lot. And this little like curio museum in Austin purchased it because obviously the guy who runs that place knew what it was, and he was like, I'm getting that thing. So he got it, and so of course I'm like, guys, because we have friends that are in Austin. I'm like, guys, we gotta fucking go see Sam's Ranch, and they're fucking. So they take, you know, we drive up there and they take, I didn't know where it was, but they took us there or whatever. And as soon as we stepped in the building, I was like, it's the real deal. It fucking stinks in here.
Holy shit.
And it was the same complaint, like you could tell, to me, it was the same complaint, like the guy had talked about how, like, he was like, my house was permeated with this constant low-key smell of decay. And as soon as I walked in, I was like, that's what that is. Holy shit. So I still don't know if it was Sasquatch, because when we went to look at it,
they need to just like thaw him out and put him in some formaldehyde. You know? Yeah,
I know. I'm sure that at this point it's dangerous to do that, because it's been kind of, you remember the stories of what happened in Alaska when they're drill or using bulldozers to push the ice out of the way to get down to where the gold was, and there's all those. In the tundra, in the ice, there's all these pieces of animals and shit and trees and stuff that have been frozen in there for 10,000 years, which means that once they get above freezing, the decay process is incredibly accelerated.
Just drop all the ice in there. Just drop the ice right in formaldehyde. And as it melts away, it will be faced with formaldehyde.
That might work. I don't know. That would require a very large tank and a hell of a lot of formaldehyde.
Yeah. But we gotta take a little break.
Yep, we need to take a break. I need to cough.
Russ needs to cough. All right, well, we're gonna take a quick break and we'll be right back. Snakes!
Dark influences reside in dark places.
Limit this conversation by two limited individuals. Snake Bros! Smooth. Smooth. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Brothers of the Serpent podcast. We hail from the 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science, and breaking all the rules every time except for the one cardinal rule, which we never break, which is politics.
But we lie about it every time.
Yeah, we lie all the time about that. But that's part of the rules. Anyway, so I'm breaking the rules.
This is a rule that was formed on the
very first episode. I realized that I can't drink wine.
Legendary ancient period.
Yeah, I can't drink wine while we're doing Snake Bros. Otherwise, I do ridiculous stuff. But this time I'm going out on a limb. I'm trying some whiskey.
Should be fine. It'll be fine.
Whiskey. Well, it's whiskey and Pepsi.
Yeah, close enough. It's good enough.
Close enough. But we're gonna see how it goes.
Yeah. So the last segment we kind of finished up talking about carnivals and weird museums and shit and Sam's Ranch, and that made me think of something else, which I've been wanting to kind of bring up on this show. Another museum that we went to one time. But first, let's preface it with this story. By the way, this website, Ancient Origins, it's ancient-origins.net. You guys,
badass.
I have been using this website for probably 8 years. Like, you'll find me all in the comments in there. I'm telling everybody they're full of shit in the comments on this website. But this website is great. They have articles on just about every kind of ancient mystery you can think of, and they're really well done. And they've got speculative stuff, but then they have stuff that's like straight up science. Everything is referenced and cited, so it's a really good website. So that's where this article comes from that I'm about to read from. It's called "The Mystery of the San Pedro Mountains Mummy." Okay, so check this out. In June 1934, two gold prospectors who had been digging and blasting for gold within the San Pedro Mountains in Wyoming came across a small cavern buried deep within the thick rock. When the dust began to settle, the prospectors made a startling discovery: the well-preserved but long forgotten remains of a tiny human. Now, I want to interject here. You remember, did you tell the story about you were between here and California and you stopped at this badass hotel? It was like Elvis, the room you got was Elvis themed or something like that. But it was every room there was themed. But you went to a bar nearby and there were a bunch of Native Americans in there. And you started talking, you went in there like, tell me about the giants. And they said, what you need to look at is the little people, right? Didn't they say something like that? Look in the other direction, the little people. I remember this,
Okay, well, I don't know.
Shit.
I don't remember that specifically, but I do remember them saying, man, white people
didn't know.
Y'all don't know anything.
I totally agree.
They were basically telling me that they've, in their histories, they've dealt with all kinds of shit that we deny.
Oh, yeah.
Giants, little people, all of it.
Right.
And there were some places nearby that I wish I had recorded the conversation, but they weren't very specific either. They were just there's
you're not gonna get on the res and dig this shit up, yeah.
But some of the sites that quote unquote white people have
white man
discovered and determined who made them. They're just like, pfft.
yeah, right, exactly. So, but the subject of the little people was interesting to me because and maybe I'm remembering this wrong, but I remember you telling me that you went in there to ask them about giants, and they were like, yeah, but you should also look in the other direction, the little people.
Yeah, that might have happened. I don't remember.
And we had a friend whose family owned a lot of land down in South Texas, close to Big Bend, and there was a multi-year project with the University of Texas coming down there and doing excavations out of this cave, and they pulled lots of skeletons out of it. And the girl, the woman that we knew, she was a little girl, she was out there, and she said she remembers that the skeletons in there were her size. They were little, right? But those were she was a child, so they're child size. So this is different. This is the story that I'm reading here, but it's still a little person, but this is a very tiny person. Okay, so the origins of this little human were a mystery. Local Native American tribes were known to tell stories of legendary tiny people, little spirits, or the Nymarija. I think it's Nymarija. In some of these stories, the small people had magical powers or healing powers. In other stories, they were a vicious tribe who attacked the Native Americans with poisoned arrows. 3 darts is too much. The discovery of the mummified remains drew much attention to the area, eliciting many questions and creating controversy. There were many who doubted the veracity of the prospector's story, believing the remains to be fabricated and the story a hoax. The discovery of the mummified remains drew much attention to the area, eliciting many questions and creating controversy. There were many who doubted the veracity of the prospector's story, believing the remains to be fabricated and the story a hoax. Scientists flocked to the area, all with a deep desire to determine the truth behind the tiny person nicknamed Pedro, with a sitting height of 6 1/2 inches.
Wait a minute. They nicknamed the guy Pedro?
Because he was in the San Pedro Mountains.
Yeah, but who named those? Come on.
I don't know. It's Pedro. But I don't know.
Come on.
San Pedro Mountains in Wyoming. That's all I got to say. Yeah. So with a sitting height
not named by the Indians.
No, of course not. With a sitting height of 6 1/2 inches. Okay, that's how tall he is sitting down, and an estimated standing height of 14 inches. It was clear that these were no ordinary remains. Scientists conducted extensive testing on Pedro. First, they reviewed the outward physical appearance. Pedro was found in a sitting position, cross-legged, on a small ledge within what appeared to be a man-made cave. Now, you have to also remember the cave, quote-unquote, cave that they came across. They were blasting into the side of this canyon. So essentially what we're looking at here is a room that had no egress. There was no entrance and no exit.
That they knew of, yeah.
Well, it was a cube room, and it had a little ledge up on one side. The description I read, there's a little ledge on one side, but it's basically just a square room, and he was up on the ledge, And it was like a hole in the rock.
Yeah, but if they're blasting into it, you know,
Yeah.
how did they get there, right? They blasted a part of it off. So how can they say there's no, unless they piece the rocks together?
Well, okay. There was no entrance that people could use, I guess what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they would have noticed a very large, like a tunnel you could walk through or even crawl through. Or
Yeah,
whatever.
unless they blew it up when they were blasting. That was my point. Like, they blow up into the room and then say there's no way to enter or exit the room.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing that out there. Script derping, you know, just
So like they may have like blown it up and like the whatever exit collapsed or something, and then they just didn't notice that there was an exit or something.
Yeah, I mean, if they blew into the room, like, how do they know that there was no entrance or exit?
Well, it may have been an exit into more rock. That's what I mean is like no exit that went out into the open. Is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, I don't see how you could conceal that just from like if you blasted your way in and this tunnel kind of came through and you sort of collapsed part of it. Well, you would you're clearing the debris, you would notice that there was a tunnel, right? I mean, that's what they were doing is clear it. They would blast it and then they clear all the debris out, and you do all of it because you're a prospect. You're prospecting. You're looking for gold. You want to clear out everything to see if there's.
Yeah.
So I presumed that they would have found any kind of exit or entrance if one had existed. But you're right. It's possible that they didn't. It doesn't.
Well, yeah. The other option or possibility is that whatever entrance or exit had already caved in, like, prior to them showing up and blasting.
Yeah.
So they might have blasted into the tunnel, but not known it was a tunnel because it was already collapsed. I don't know. Anyway, just moving on. Surely the entrance was small.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. To me, that just made it seem like it was very, very old because we're talking about, like, it seemed like, I'm like, okay, so what, you're in a canyon and it's rock. Like, how do you get a room inside the rock that, you know, it was just a fascinating concept. Like, it must have been really old. So I don't know. Anyway, let's see. Okay, so he was found in a sitting position, cross-legged on a small ledge within what appeared to be a man-made cave. With bulging eyes and a flattened cranium, Pedro was extremely well preserved. So much so that even his fingernails were visible. A gelatinous substance covered his head, and it became clear that liquids had been used to preserve the body. His nose was flattened, he had a full set of teeth, and his skin was brown and wrinkled, creating the appearance of an old man. In the years following the discovery of Pedro, scientists conducted more invasive testing utilizing X-rays to unlock the mystery. Several anthropologists initially concluded that the remains were those of an infant, likely born prematurely, or who died shortly after birth. This, however, is an area of disagreement, as a second body of scientists believe the remains to be those of an adult, possibly 16 to 65 years of age. It has been said that X-rays revealed sharp teeth and the presence of food in the stomach that appeared to be raw meat. The X-rays also suggested that Pedro had suffered a violent death, showing broken bones, a damaged spine, and damage to the skull. The discovery of the mummified remains led to a significant speculations that remains were a hoax, right? So the presence of the gelatinous substance on his head led some to believe that the remains were actually those of a deceased infant recovered from a medical facility, or that the prospectors had created the remains using a crude form of taxidermy. However, others maintained that the remains were evidence of a leprechaun-like race, like those mentioned in the legends of the local indigenous people, or evidence of an extraterrestrial being. Of course, there's aliens in there. It was difficult for many to fathom that such a human of such tiny stature could possibly be an adult. While modern testing could provide many more answers about the origins of Pedro, such testing is not possible because the location of the remains has been unknown for several years.
Yeah, of course.
It is said that the remains were put on display during sideshows in the 1940s. Okay, this is why I thought of this. And were then purchased by a man named Ivan Goodman. Upon Goodman's death in 1950, the remains passed to a man named Leonard Walder, sometimes reported as Walder, and the remains have not been seen since. With the remains nowhere to be found, the mysteries of Pedro linger to this day. Most scientists agree that Pedro's remains were those of an adult, male human. However, modern testing could have answered so many additional questions like where he came from, whether he suffered any diseases or congenital conditions, what the gelatinous substance was, and how his remains came to be sealed within a thick layer of rock. The answers to these questions and many others are likely to remain unanswered unless the remains can be located and further tested. Until then, scientists and enthusiasts can only speculate about who or what he was. Okay, so that's the end of the article. More information that I've seen pictures. They do have photographs. Here, I'll show you some. No, they do have photographs of the guy, and he's pretty weird looking. Let's see. So I wanted to do. Yeah, here you go. So that's a picture of what he looked like, and then a black and white, and then the skeleton that you see in the X-ray.
Yeah.
So things that I notice about
Very long arms, yeah.
yeah, so things that I notice about him, like he does not have the proportions of an infant, not even close.
No. But he could have played basketball.
Very short basketball.
Yeah. I mean, proportional.
Yeah. So
Strange looking.
yeah, so he the X-rays did show that he had his complete skeleton, and that again.
So it could have been a burial.
Yeah, it's a burial. The other thing is that, and they don't say this in the article, but he was killed by a blow to the back of the head. Okay, like you can tell that his head is smashed, and like not really in this picture, but there are other ones where you can see that the back of his head is kind of collapsed. Okay, and the gelatinous substance appears to be brains. I mean, like it looks like his head was crushed almost completely in, and there's this stuff that kind of sits around the rim that looks like brains. So it just looks like he got a crushed head. What's fascinating about this is that again, with the local indigenous people, when they talk about the legends of these little people that they have, they say that the little people had a tradition of, like when their people would reach a certain age, they would make a decision, and it was always the decision of the old person that they were kind of done. They were done with life, right? And they would throw this enormous party in honor of this old person or whatever. And at some point in the party, when everybody's partying, and they may last for days, but everybody's eating and getting hammered and just doing all the kind of. And at some point, someone who has been chosen from the rest of the tribe, like they kind of draw straws for it, or they pick by chance. At some point, that person kind of walks up behind the old and just kills them with an instant blow to the head. Like, so they die in the midst of revelry, and they never even know it hit them. Right, kills them with one blow. And that's exactly what it looks like. Is that his head is caved in.
So this gelatinous substance is still gelatinous after
Yeah,
being a really old.
It was gelatinous. Now he's mummified, so it's dried out, but it's spongy or whatever is the way they described it. It's like it's dry, desiccated, but it's a spongy substance. Anyway, connecting to the whole museum thing, do you remember when we went to the Mummies of the World museum thing? Okay, so do you remember me flipping out at the near the end of the display? They had they had this case, this glass case, and there were two. What they said were babies in there.
Yeah.
And one of them, I was like, that is fucking Pedro. Now, it's not. It wasn't Pedro, but it looked just like him. He had the same, so there were two of them in there. They said they were babies that had this particular kind of.
Yeah, but their heads were like really strange looking.
Yeah, well, the one was definitely a baby. He had the proportions of an infant. The arms were short and stuff. Like he had the really large head compared to the rest of the body, and it just kind of looked like an infant. The other one that was in that case, that was also supposed to be a fetus, had the proportions of an adult. Really long legs, really long arms, and his hands were on his knees, and you could see all the tendons in his hands, and like you could see the fingernails and everything. It was like, and they were just long. I mean, he was tiny, so the hands were, the size of like the length of my thumb was the size of his hands, but you could see all the detail in the fingernails and everything. And I saw him, and the back of his head was crushed in, and he had the same weird. Like the head gets crushed and like brains look like they come out in the front or whatever. It looked exactly the same. He had the same face with the bulging eyes. Okay, now people have said that with Pedro, they think that his eyes are bulging because his head was crushed, right? That would cause that. You end up with these, with protruding eyes or whatever. But that's a distinctive. That's a distinctive thing about Pedro. When you look at him, you see the pictures. His eyes are like sticking out of his head. They're literally bulging. The one that we saw in the Mummies of the World thing was also like that. I just saw that thing and I was like, that's holy shit. This is the same thing as Pedro. This isn't an infant. Do you remember me flipping out about that? I was like, holy crap, holy fuck. Do you remember that at all?
I just remember looking at that thing and thinking that does not look like a baby.
Right. It had a full set of teeth.
Yeah.
So I when we came home and later on, and I did this recently too, I went and looked up the Mummies of the World Museum. What do they call it? It's like a traveling
exhibit.
Yeah. So I went and looked it up, and there's like when we went in there, they told us no cameras, can't take any pictures, and their excuse was because some of these mummies have living relatives and they don't want the corpses of their ancestors all over the internet, right? That's what they said, and I was like, okay, wow. why'd you give them to a traveling?
But they're all on the internet like selfie.
Yeah, not with the corpse of their ancestor, though. I don't know. Anyway, I just like, okay. But, so I didn't take any pictures while we were there, which I regret now. I would, if I could have had a picture of this guy, I could put him side by side with Pedro and be like, look, this is the same thing. But people did take pictures. There's an enormous number of pictures about the Mummies of the World exhibit online, and there are pictures of every single freaking mummy that we saw there except that one. I mean, even the other baby in the same case, there's pictures of that baby, and you can see, like, that there's another one over here, the other guy. You can see that, like, you're looking at the picture of the baby, and you can see, like, a piece of his toe or something like that. You know he's there, but there are no photos of him.
Good stuff.
That's weird because I only remember one baby.
There was the
in
big
case.
there was the big Detmold baby. That's not the one I'm talking about. He was kind of up high, and he was, like, dark brown, and he had been flattened. You know?
No, I remember one in a case that was like in a sitting position
Yeah.
that did not look like a baby.
Yeah, that's the one I'm talking about. There was another one next to him that did look like a baby.
Okay.
And they were trying to say that these are these were two of the same thing. That the label was that I can't remember what the condition is, but there's a specific, like a congenital defect that is always is deadly. That the infant doesn't survive it because they're born without a brain.
Right, probably.
So the other infant that was in there, not
Chromosome defect or something.
Yeah. So the other one that did look like a baby that was in the same case, the whole top and upper, like the back part of his skull was just missing. It wasn't crushed. He just didn't have it. He never formed it. And you could see right in there and see that he never had a brain in there either, right? And the other weird thing about this particular congenital condition is that the infants will have teeth, and he had 4 weird-looking teeth, and it was very strange looking because you got this baby, right? And he's obviously a very tiny, like, malformed infant, but like you could see these teeth in his mouth, and it's creepy. All right. Well, this other guy looked nothing like that. He didn't look like an infant at all. The only thing that they use to say that it's the same condition is the fact that the head's crushed in, and it kind of, you know, they're like, see, it's the same. Like, this head's crushed, you know, this head's like that. You know, you're like, no, this one never had that part of the skull or a brain in there. This guy's had his skull smashed. So, and I've had debates with people online about this, about Pedro. They're like, it's obviously this condition. I'm like, no, it isn't. Like, go look at any picture of other infants that had that condition. They don't look like an adult. They're not the same complete proportions as a baby. They do have longer arms, longer legs, and so on and so forth. But you could still tell that it's an infant. This guy, if he was standing up, would look like a fully formed, perfectly proportional adult who just happened to be about 16 inches tall. You know? So I just found that to be fascinating. Like, and I tried asking one of the museum people there, where did you get this? Where did this come from? And why is it labeled as the same as this baby? You know, and she was like, oh, well, they had the same, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, no, they don't. Look at them. They don't look the same at all. The baby one, first of all, is white. This guy's dark brown, like, you know, and you could tell that he's dark brown because of mummification, whereas the baby was preserved in something. He was not mummified at all. So it was a very strange deal. And she told me that she didn't know where it came from. So...
yeah, I don't remember all those details. I just remember one baby not looking like a baby.
Yeah, that was him.
I was like, that doesn't look like a baby.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you would have known about Pedro, I'm sure you would have recognized it. Because, like, instantly, when I saw it, I was like, holy shit, that's Pedro's brother.
Yeah.
You know.
I was flipping out about the Book of the Dead.
Oh, yeah.
It was pretty badass, but...
yeah, that was cool. Like, there was a lot of very strange things in that, like, you remember the German guy? The German mummy, still fully dressed, had the huge boots on.
No.
You don't remember that? He was like 6'8".
No, I don't.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah.
All right, so one more question we had from Kmart, from old Kevin. He wanted to talk about there's...
What have you got for me?
It's kind of like it's an interesting thing that I've known about for a while, where you can, and if anybody hasn't tried this, you got to try it. Like, you basically just, here, I'll do it to you. Let's see if you can feel this, right? I'm not going to touch you, but you should be able to feel it.
What am I supposed to do?
You feel anything? Is it tingly?
Sorry, what?
Yeah, kind of. I feel like my eyes really want to cross.
Yeah, that happens too. But you can do it. You can close your eyes, and basically all I did was I just took my my middle finger and my forefinger, and you just like approach the person right between the eyes on the bridge of the nose. But don't touch them. I didn't even have to get. I was like an inch away, and like whenever I've done this to people or had people do it to me, like that area starts to tingle.
Yeah. It feels like
you're being put like something's pressing on it,
tightening in there.
Yeah. So he was asking about that sensation, and he also pointed out that he's had sleep paralysis, and I know we've talked about that on the show before. I've had sleep paralysis, but this was interesting. He said, so you know that feeling when you do that and you're going to press on it feels like something's pressing on you right there or whatever. He said that's the same thing I felt during sleep paralysis. Like the reason he felt like there was a presence in the room when he woke up paralyzed is because he felt that same thing, like somebody's fingers were right there. You know, like there was the same sort of pressing, except it was like over the whole body. So I found that to be fascinating. Now, he was asking about like why does this sensation happen? Like I've read a bunch of different things. You know, obviously there's the more like new agey people that are like, oh, it's because it's your aura and like somebody else's aura is getting in your aura and you can feel it. You know, or,
don't touch my crystal, man.
don't touch my fucking crystal, man. You steal my karma. But then there's also the explanation that it's psychosomatic, that like you feel like you should feel it because it's in a place that's a blind spot. So you can't look at it to see if they're really touching you or not, But I think that's a bad explanation because I'm like, well, you don't like if somebody does that to your back where you can't see, you're not like, ooh, I feel like somebody's touching me back there when they're not. It only works in that spot and it's very specific and it's a strong feeling. Like I've done it for people. I'm like, close your eyes, and they don't even know what I'm gonna do. I'm like, I wanted to, the person I was doing to, I wanted to demonstrate to them the sensation of like, of having somebody approach, your personal space or whatever. I was just like, check this out, and like I told them to close their eyes, and I put my fingers up like right there at the bridge of their nose, and they started to like go backward. And they didn't know what I was doing. They didn't know I was pointing at them.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, what are you doing? Stop! What are you doing? So it's very strange. Like, does it have something to do with, like maybe the electrical pattern of your brain? Like, I was thinking about looking that up. Like, is there a?
Yeah, that's what Kmart was mentioning too. Is that, like there's an electromagnetic field around your brain.
Yeah, around your whole body. Really.
Yeah, your whole body because of the neurological system.
Yeah.
It's all electrical. So he was asking,
so is that like
could that be what it is? Like,
yeah.
Is that what you're feeling? Is like the electromagnetic field interacting with your electromagnetic field, which causes induction into your neural system?
Yeah, exactly.
It seems perfectly plausible to me, but I have this weird sensation that doesn't make sense in that frame. And I've done this multiple times, but only when I'm like laying down to go to sleep, it's dark in the room or whatever, I can close my eyes and I can hold out my hand, like sort of facing down towards my pillow and move it back and forth in front of my eyes, and I can see it.
When your eyes are closed.
When my eyes are closed.
Yeah,
I can see my hand. Now, I obviously know the location of my hand.
Right.
Right? And this is part of the thing. Like, I'm like, okay, I know where my hand is.
Yeah.
So
you have
am I really seeing it?
You have a body image that your mind is constantly
Right.
building.
But the image that I see is not my hand. It's like, it's the shape of my hand, but it's more light. It just looks like a slight...
It's a wireframe. Your brain isn't filling in all the details.
Right, but it's a solid...
I know. I'm
lighter
just joking.
color.
Yeah.
Right. Than black of my eyes being closed.
Right.
And the first time I did this, I was like, "What the fuck? Like,
Yeah.
what's going on?"
Yeah.
And I can open my eyes, and when I'm trying to look, like the room's black, and I still can't see my hand. But it's like, and I close my eyes and. I don't know why, but I can see it. And then so I'm like, am I just like
Yeah, so have you experimented, like, get somebody else to wave their hand over your head?
No, I
Like, tell
haven't.
Laura, like, hey, what kind of wave your hand back and forth here? And see
No,
if
I
can
haven't
see
tried
it.
that. That's a good idea.
Yeah, because, like, if you can see that, holy shit.
Yeah.
I've read, okay, so
But I've also had sensations where I can see the room.
yeah, now that I was
well,
going to say,
with my eyes closed.
I have noticed, like, I'll be laying there in bed or whatever, just chill. I'm not asleep yet. I'm thinking about stuff, and I realize that I'm looking at my room. That I've been looking around at it for a while, and I'm like, but my eyes are closed, but it's
Yeah.
perfectly clear, and it's not shadowy or whatever. It's like it's clear, and I'm looking at the room, but when I do open my eyes, the room's pitch black, and
Yeah.
I can't see anything.
Yeah.
But before I opened my eyes, I was seeing the room perfectly.
Yeah, and I've also had the same sensation where whatever I'm seeing is out of my field of view,
Yeah,
but I can see it.
yeah, behind you.
With my eyes closed.
Yeah.
So I don't.
So clearly we're psychic and badass.
Well, at the same time, it's like I don't know if I'm really seeing this or this is my mind like building it. But I've done this thing with my
Well, here's the
hand
thing.
in front of my closed eyes like so many times. I mean, it could be echolocation,
Yeah.
right? Because I have a fan running in my room
Right.
too. So my hand is. I should be able to
reflecting
see
sounds.
my hand with my two ears open the same way I see it with my two eyes.
Yeah.
But it's like very clear.
Yeah.
I can't see lines or my ring or
Yeah.
wrinkles on my hand or anything, but I can see the shape.
Yeah, I think the answer to am I really seeing this or is my brain just doing something else? I think it doesn't matter if the information is correct.
Right. So
That's why
the term see I use often not necessarily meaning with eyes.
Yeah.
Like seeing something is to perceive it in a way.
Okay.
So
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like, so when I'm seeing the room and it's pitch black and I actually can't see it with my eyes, but I'm perceiving it perfectly, and I can see all the. Oh, yeah, it's out in the car. I can see all the details. Like I can see that closet door is open, and this stuff is over here, and I can see the books on the shelf, and I can read the titles of the covers. Which is something like. One argument would be like, well, you actually know all that stuff because you did see it in the light earlier, and I'm like, well, I don't remember the titles or the order the books are in because they're not in any particular order. They're just
But
thrown
still
up there.
but-
And then some of them on the floor because my cat gets on the shelf and pushes the books up the shelf, and I know that
Yeah.
the books are down on the floor. I don't know which ones they are.
yeah, but just because you see a flame and then you feel the heat doesn't make the feeling of the heat any less true.
Right.
It's like, yeah, well, my eyes confirmed that my heat sense in my skin is correct.
right that I'm feeling that because there's a flame there.
Right. So to perceive it, like, for example, when something freezing cold, like a really small thing, let's say you heat it up like, or cooled down or froze a piece of ice, right? You got a little piece of ice. You freeze a piece of ice. Okay. You have a small piece of ice. Damn it. Okay, I'm trying to make
You have a drop of water and you freeze it into a piece of ice. Okay.
Right. This is brilliant, guys. Just wait.
Just try it. It's great.
So you have a really small edge of something frozen.
Okay.
And you touch somebody on the arm with it. And you're not putting a full hand that's cold on their arm.
Yeah.
They'll instantly know that it's a cold hand.
Right. But you do that and they're like, are you being burned or is it cold?
Right.
Yeah.
Now, if they saw the ice prior to it touching their skin, they know that the sensation that they're feeling is cold.
Right.
But if they don't see it, and you just get the sharp edge of a piece of ice touching you on the arm somewhere,
It might
the
be like a
of the
hot
arm,
knife. Yeah.
You don't. Yeah, you might not know what that sensation is, even though it's like severe.
Yeah.
You're like, ah.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to say is that you know, and have seen with your eyes the light reflecting off of all of the angles and everything in your room helps you recognize possibly other sense abilities that your
Yeah.
body has to also perceive the room
Yeah.
and the titles on the books.
Yeah.
So that's not really.
That's the thing.
That's not really a good way to script herb something and say, well, you fucking have seen it. Yes, that could be actually confirming the
that's
other
true.
sense that you have.
What I'm saying is they
and
were
helping
trying.
you
They were
recognize
trying
it.
to imply that all this was in my subconscious, and so I'm like looking around at something, and it's like, well, they're like, all of that is in your memory, and so you may not be perceiving it It's just that you know that you're in the room, and so you're like your eyes are closed or whatever, and you're about to go into the dream state, and you have this mind picture of what your room was like because you have seen it before, but you're not seeing it now. But so my question was always like, and I've not tried this, just like I was asking you, have you gotten somebody else to wave their hand in front of your face? Like, it would be interesting to me, and of course this is almost impossible because this only happens when I'm laying in bed going to sleep, and I don't necessarily have people around when that's happening. And even if I did, like you can very easily sort of, I don't know how to go into that state where I'm perceiving the room with my eyes closed. It's happened randomly several times, but I know that if I disturbed it enough to say to somebody else like, "Hey, get up and do something," and I'm going to see if I could see it, I would probably pull myself out of it. But that would be the question: like, could I perceive changes taking place while I'm in that state? And if so, changes that I'm not aware. In other words, like somebody comes in and does something in the room and then leaves,
Right.
And like, so I've got
another part of the problem, since like no one's around when I'm going to sleep. Changes in the room don't take place.
Yeah. Or if the other way to do it is if somebody had come into the room and changed something that I did not know was changed and didn't see somehow before I went to bed. Right. And then I noticed that change while I was looking at it this way. I'd be like, what is that? Why is that over there?
Right. Well, there you can make a legitimate argument that somebody else could have put a book in place on your bookshelf, like taken one down and put it back in a different place.
Right. But not recently. In other words, like it would have to be something that I did not actually physically see when I came in there to go to bed.
Yeah. See, I understand that. That's like trying to turn this into a scientific experiment.
Or try to overcome any kind of skirt derping. But it's not
that's
really,
what I mean.
To me, really, the point really is I'm like, holy shit, I'm seeing with my eyes closed. And it's
Right.
badass.
My point is that the fact that you've seen your room may help whatever more subtle sense that you have that also can perceive the room.
Right, so the brain
that you
is-
might not recognize.
Right, the brain is building a picture on top of this thing that's being perceived. And
Yeah,
like,
and
using what I've seen before to layer over top of it.
Right. So if you were blind and someone touched you with the sharp edge of a piece of ice, you would have to completely rely on your sense, on your skin, your sense of touch to determine exactly what that was.
Right.
And that would be more difficult.
Yeah.
But if you combine that with, say, hearing the ice maker run for a second and then seeing a piece of ice, then it's easy to identify in detail
To get that fucking hot knife off my arm.
what's going on. Right. So in the same sense, like because you've seen your room and you've been in your room and you've walked and you've read the books, you know what's going on, there's another sense that perhaps that can also perceive that shit. And that makes it more clear to you.
Yeah.
The confirmation.
Yeah. I've read quite a few stories, fictional, obviously. These are fictional stories of various. Some of them are science fiction. Some of them are more, like fantasy design or whatever.
Like way over time.
Yeah, it's all right. But like, there's this in Eastern practices. There is this state of mind where you are perceiving things with your eyes closed, and they practice this by blindfolding themselves and then going walking around. And you're so the whole time obviously your other senses come into play, big time, right? But they always describe it in these Eastern sort of mysticism beliefs, or whatever, that people show up especially powerfully because they are made of fire, like they have this inner spirit. So anything alive, people and other animals and shit, you'll be able to see them very clearly, and they're bright when you're using this kind of inner sight thing, right? Inanimate objects don't have that inner fire, but nevertheless you can perceive them. They're just going to be a lot more dim, I guess, right? So that there's been just some fascinating concept, like these stories or whatever, that talk about this ancient belief. And then I've even seen it in some illustrated stuff where the person is trying to show you what is being perceived, right? So you see this person and he's standing there and he's got this blindfold on, and you're shown the scene, right? So he's standing and there's a bridge right here and there's people walking around and there's trees and stuff like that, and then you see what he's perceiving and it's all dark and you can kind of really faintly see the bridge, but it's not exactly the right shape, but it's in the right place, and if he went to walk on it he would not fall in the water, right? And so there's other details, but the background information is sparse, but he can see the trees as these little fluffy, there's a single like, it looks like veins, there's a line going up the middle, and then there's some fluffy stuff, but the people are like these flames. They're bright, they're these bright floating flames or whatever. But the closer they get to him, the more detail he's got.
Yeah.
So that when they're standing right next to him, it's just a bright sort of think of a shadow reversed to be bright. Right, you don't see face and any of that, but you see their full form with all the details, but it's the outline and it's just really fucking bright. And like, I don't know, it's fascinating because
It'd be really interesting to
try that.
interview a blind person. Like I've never met. Well, in my adult life, like I have not known closely or personally a blind person.
Yeah.
Or someone who has been blind at birth, and that would be very interesting for me to.
Because they have a world picture just like we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would love to have that described to me in the way they perceive it, because they do perceive it.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
And there's no doubt about that.
Right. I've read in multiple different places that like blind people can totally drive. It's that people with sight are too afraid to let them do it.
Yeah.
But a blind person has the same world picture that we do and can see all the same stuff.
But they have to drive motorcycles. Like they can't. They can't roll in a car, dude.
No, they totally can.
No, they can't. They got to be outside, right?
No, they don't have to be.
They have to have microphones on their cars.
Nope. Their hearing is a lot better than ours.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
Nope.
It's better for them to be. Yeah. They can't see that stuff. Can't hear that stuff outside the car. Yeah.
Blind people can't even listen to this podcast. And if they can't, if
it's not like this podcast is made in Braille.
If one of you blind people are listening to this podcast and you disagree with me, then fucking send us an email and we'll interview you.
That's right. I'll let you drive my car. We'll prove it, bro.
Yeah, Russ has already hit like 5 deer.
Yeah, I probably got this brand new car. I've already hit 5 deer. I'll let you drive it.
Yeah.
If you hit a deer, I don't care. But since you're blind, you should see that deer better than me because I can't see them because they're in the dark. But you can see them.
All right.
We gotta take a break.
We're gonna be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Snakes.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Snake Bro. Brothers of the Serpent podcast, all acoustic music. Every day, every time. Not really. Going off the cuff, this episode, ladies and gentlemen.
Wait, did you just do the intro?
Yeah, it's done.
Okay.
You were singing. So. It was pretty badass.
I didn't know we were actually
I
recording.
didn't want to interrupt you. I was just like, fuck, we're running out of time here. And for the 10 by 10 by 10 by 10 by 10 by 10, Dan to Cuba fucking science.
That's right. And we were going to get into some pretty good science here. We talked about the Bermuda Triangle a few episodes back, like 9 months ago. And at the time, I was kind of going off the cuff, didn't have the book with me, wasn't really referencing it. But now I do, and I've gone through it and specifically tagged some of the disappearance information and some of the other very interesting shit that this guy has in this book, which is, by the way, it is into the Bermuda Triangle, Pursuing the Truth Behind the World's Greatest Mystery by a guy named Gian Quasar.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Harry Potter name.
That's right. He should be doing an astronomy book, but you know.
Well, maybe that's
Mysteries
the answer.
of Space and the Cosmos by Gian Quasar.
Yeah, in 1,000 years, they'll be like, yeah, it was actually quasars that were causing
Yeah,
strange,
somehow-
anomalous activity. in
Yeah,
this,
back on that mythical planet that they used to live on the Earth.
And the guy that wrote about it was Quasar.
Yeah, Quasar. Okay, so I'm going to start with this one. This is an interesting kind of intro into this. I just had it. Great. Lost it.
Yeah, well,
here it is.
I'll just fill the space in. Okay, go ahead. Go, Russ.
So this is a section called The Riddle of the Missing Plane. So he says, the current enigma of the Bermuda Triangle grew out of an extraordinary event that took place December 5th, 1945. This was the disappearance of not just one aircraft, but 5, flying together in formation with a combined crew of 14. And then later that night, the disappearance of one of the rescue planes carrying 13 crew. The disappearance of 6 aircraft and 27 military personnel without trace in one night was so extraordinary that the public interest in this mystery eventually led to journalistic review of earlier and then later disappearances until the Bermuda Triangle's name and reputation were established. Okay, so he's talking about Flight 19 there. But that is when you...
Wait, can you explain Flight 19? Just kidding.
Well, I mean, I have it all right here.
No, it's already been done.
Yeah. It's been done.
It had probably been done already, but last time we brought it up, I
yeah, can you explain that one? Can you explain that Flight 19?
But I actually do remember.
Yeah.
So probably backwards, but I think it was Flight 91, right?
Right, yeah. It's Flight 91.
Yeah,
that's right. That's right. It was 91 planes and 5 military personnel.
Right.
Okay, so this is interesting. He's got a bunch of short descriptions of disappearances in this, but he's basically talking about how people have tried to say, well, the disappearances aren't really, they're not still happening, and it's because our technology's gotten better and blah, blah, blah. So he says, there is no evidence, however, that the circumstances for disappearances are any less unusual than before. Mystery continues to strike. On Christmas Eve, 1994, a Piper aircraft vanished over West Boca Raton, Florida. One of the few instances of a plane ostensibly disappearing over land. Although radar operators could never find a trace of it in their tracking readouts, a witness below clearly saw the navigation lights of the Piper. Investigation proved that it must have belonged to Laurent Abicasis, who had taken the plane out earlier in the day for some practice flying. Then on May 12, 1999, an Aero commander, while approaching Nassau, disappeared from radar for 30 minutes, then miraculously reappeared, though the pilot seemed unaware anything had happened, before the plane and pilot vanished again, and this time permanently.
Wow.
On February 1st, 2001, Casey Purvis was in his Cherokee 6 playing radar tag with a Coast Guard aircraft as a practice maneuver. Suddenly, he reported himself in a fog, and then he vanished. Wreckage from the aircraft was later found near Marathon, Florida Keys, where he last reported himself. Weather from both the nearby Coast Guard aircraft and Marathon reporting station confirmed visibility was clear for 12 miles. On July 20th, 2002, a Piper Lance mysteriously crashed after taking off from Freeport, Grand Bahama. After having been in flight long enough to have been halfway to Florida, its fuselage was found 15 miles from its point of departure. Okay. Radar tracking cannot explain it. The phenomenon of the bizarre is not abating. So, I mean, like, that one's weird, that last
Fucking
one.
Pipers.
Fucking Pikers. Great comment, Kyle, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, this part is fascinating. It's not about missing planes, but this is just, he's talking about the area itself. He says, let's see. Oh yeah, okay. In the long run, the Bermuda Triangle's mystery is inseparable from its location. And its ultimate solution must therefore be found in solving the greater mystery of this Earth, this island at the confluence of the fabulous currents of mass and energy in time and space. For even now, in the opening decade of the 21st century, we look beneath us to our past accomplishments rather than up to gaze at this vast and final horizon where the secrets of the force fields that hold this planet together remain more unknown to us than was the germ before Pasteur. The habits of these times are to sit in our parlors somewhat at peace in our assurance that we have now vanquished the unknown over the whole earth, climbed her highest last peak, sent bathyspheres to her deepest trenches below the sea, and swaddled her heavens in speeding satellites. We spin a globe of our earth before us, bemusedly contemplating our dominion over it, while blithely forgetting we neither understand nor can solve the forces involved in its rotation and revolution. As a matter of argument, we are quick to add that we have long tested the strengths of the magnetic field. However, along with inconsistencies, this has given us a ponderous cache of unexplained vagaries. Cold War atomic tests have revealed other mysteries of the magnetic field. All the Russian, U.S., and British atomic bomb drops in the northern hemisphere were followed by unusual auroras and lights in the ionosphere in the southern hemisphere at the exact magnetic opposite of the test site.
Wow. That's fucking cool.
Yeah, after the atomic destruction of the city of Hiroshima in 1945, which lies near 36 degrees north latitude. These same lights and auroras were also noted at its magnetic opposite in the southern hemisphere near 36 degrees south latitude south of Australia. This phenomenon of magnetic opposition helps to illustrate the puzzling interplay between mass and its mysterious energy fields. Instead of disrupting the entire field line, the energy travels to the exact opposite of the other hemisphere where visible reactions occur.
So what is the exact opposite? Well,
The Bermuda Triangle?
Yeah, relative exact opposite of the Bermuda Triangle.
The Devil's Triangle near Japan.
Ah, what's there?
It's a deep sea, but that's Japan has forbidden all fishing boats and land and other naval traffic from moving through there because they lose too many ships.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. So it's a deep ocean off Japan, but like, what is Japan? It's covered in weird megalithic Atlantis buildings. You know,
Badass.
so I thought that was interesting. Like that the atomic tests had caused equal and opposite weird flashes. And this is the other thing I was going to bring this up too. This has been known for a long time by NASA and astronauts and stuff like that. But you can get videos of it now from the ISS. You can find these videos online. Whenever they're flying, whenever the ISS is passing over the Atlantic. And it's at nighttime. Okay, so you're looking down at the cameras are looking down at Earth in the nighttime, and you're looking at the Atlantic. There are these weird flashes of light, like these red flashes and purple and green that are enormous over the Atlantic, and they call it the Atlantic anomaly because they don't want to say the Bermuda Triangle, but that's exactly what it is. It's right in the same spot.
Huh.
So, and that's just one of those things that's annoying. Like, it's the Atlantic anomaly, right? Because you don't want anybody to associate it with the Bermuda Triangle. Okay, let's see. Okay, so he's talking about the Coast Guard reports. So there is no marine or aeronautic authority, including the Coast Guard, that would place such dogma in a report. And he's talking about the stuff they say. Okay, I'll just back up. Interpretation of this naturally depends on what one would consider supernatural. Is the currently unexplained, is that supernatural? Was wind shear or clear air turbulence, let me try that again. Was wind shear or clear air turbulence supernatural before both were discovered? Would disintegration by electromagnetic aberrations be supernatural simply because there is as yet no cross-reference for them? Is travel through space-time supernatural? Often, natural seems to get equated with conventional, which is true. Like, if we don't understand it, somehow it's supernatural, even though it is a natural phenomenon.
Right.
So there is no marine or aeronautic authority, including the Coast Guard, that would place such dogma in a report. Many of these reports, formerly restricted or secret, have included meticulously researched data and have also included phrases or words like, quote, north wall phenomenon, unquote, or, quote, violent unknown force, unquote, and, quote, beyond probability, unquote. As a part of the catalog of meager debris retrieved, there is also included the notation that an unexplained, quote, magnetic particle was found embedded in a recovered nose wheel of a missing aircraft. Okay, so he's just listing off, like, some of the stuff that they say in there is very interesting, but you won't ever see that in the actual reports that they put out to the public. You know, like, violent unknown force.
Yeah.
This plane was destroyed by violent unknown force, and they're not going to say that when they're... Because publicly, the Coast Guard belittles the whole... They're like, oh, it's not, there's no Bermuda Triangle, whatever. They say that it doesn't exist, even though it does in their own records.
So that makes me think that this is interesting because physicists that I've followed, listened to their lectures and whatnot, or watched their interviews, have been asked about magnets. Like, how do magnets work, man?
Fucking like, magnets. How do they work?
Yeah, like, well, I can't even give you an answer because
this is what they say.
You already, like, you can't, without getting into the math and all this kind of shit, you can't really understand it because it's something on the quantum level or whatever that really we don't have a
good analogy.
We don't have a physical analogy or anything analogous to the effect.
Yeah.
So without having this understanding purely made up of experiment and mathematical
What do you need?
like representation, you can't really grasp it. Okay? There is no physical analogy to give.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's kind of funny because the phenomenon is everywhere.
Yeah.
And like it's the same, like this strange thing with magnetics is the same force, the same physical activity that prevents me from falling through the floor.
Yeah.
It prevents you from falling through the chair that you're sitting on.
Okay.
It is so the
You're talking about the interaction of the weak nuclear force and like the way the atoms are or the molecules are held together.
it's all magnetic.
You can't move through it.
This is where this
They're
is
fields, right? It's fields.
Yeah, but it's
So are you saying the weak and strong nuclear forces are magnetic?
yeah, the thing that keeps particles separated from each other is magnetic.
Oh yeah, because they're charged. Yeah.
So the reason why I can like put my hands together and actually they clap.
Yeah.
There's this. I can't push my hands through each other.
Right.
Is magnetic.
Yeah.
Is the magnetic force. It's everything. It makes up everything that we understand as the world that we live in. Like it's not just like, oh well, this one weird piece of material that I try to move around this other metal weird piece of material causes some kind of strange reaction. No, it's everything. Like the
Well,
reason why
Neutrinos and neutrons don't have any, right?
I don't know. I'm
That's
talking-
why they radiation damage is caused by neutrons because they just run into you because they don't have a magnetic charge to make them dodge the other.
Okay,
stuff.
that may be. My
Yeah.
point is that everything that we interact with, like the fact that we can stand on the ground,
Yeah.
the fact that we don't go through every object around us, that every object doesn't dissolve into every other object,
Yeah.
is due to the magnetic force.
Right.
And so that phenomenon is ever present. It's everything that
like
we deal with
gravity.
all the time. Yeah, and gravity is another one.
Yeah. And they can't explain that one either.
Right, and they're not really explainable. Like the only way that quantum physicists that really grasp this is through strange like mathematical concepts and
Yeah.
things that they get. It's not really something that you can compare to anything else.
Yeah.
So it is funny in the way that piece was written that you just read, where they're like, well, like the atomic bomb like does this. That there's weird lights seen on the other side of the world, and
Yeah.
they don't want to make this connection or whatever. Or they act like that we understand
Yeah.
that, oh, well, the magnetic field and the force on the
Yes.
Earth is not very strong. Well, fucking A, dude. Like,
Yeah.
it's what's keeping the iron core from collapsing on itself.
Yeah.
It's what's keeping all of the elements and everything on the surface of the planet from just falling through everything else.
Yeah.
It's everything. And then you have some we fuck around with something on the quantum level, like we fuck around with the matter, and we make an element that is not known to us naturally made. We fuck with
Yeah.
it, and then we make this massive explosion which has all kinds of electromagnetic properties.
Yeah.
And then that has some polar effect on the other side of the magnetic pole of the Earth.
Yeah.
And that should not be strange. That should be like, oh yeah, of course that will happen because we're disturbing this side of the field. The other side of the field is going to react. It's going to have some similar thing. The interesting thing to me is that it results in lights, and this made me think of the Northern Lights
Yeah.
situation, like just trying to imagine what type of disturbances in an electromagnetic field result in visible light, the visible light spectrum, which trying to imagine it all in a spectrum, and then there's this specific small, like in that episode where I was illustrating on the keyboard, like
Yeah,
the
this
single
tiny
octave,
fraction, yeah.
like this tiny fraction of vibration that we perceive as light, that results due to certain magnetic anomalies.
Yeah.
Well, where we can visually perceive it.
Now that you connect it to this aurora, from what I know, the aurora is caused by solar wind interacting with the magnetic field of the Earth.
Right, and solar wind is magnetic.
Yeah, heavily magnetic, but it's also lots of tiny. It's also lots of tiny massless particles that can be excited by its interaction with our magnetic field, such that as they go ricocheting off and bouncing off into space because of our magnetic field, they go through a period of vibration that emits visible light.
Yeah. So if you imagine,
But what's weird is that is imagining that happening on the opposite side of the field, because you have to have some kind of transference there.
well, the field is polarized. So
Yeah, but
anything
the
that
particles
happens on-
aren't down there.
But anything that happens on one pole is going to result in
But it's not
some fluctuation on the
That's
other.
what I'm
on the
saying.
other
It's like
pole.
it's the particles from the solar wind doing the making the light, not the magnetic field. It's
Right. So in other words,
so where are the particles down there on the other side of the pole showing up, like appearing to vibrate like the ones up here that are making the light? You know what I'm saying? Like you have these particles coming in and bouncing off, and whatever happens with the bounce right there, it isn't the magnetic field that's making light. It's the particles that are being bounced.
Well, how do we know that? Like
That's-
it could be just that the interaction between these two
Yeah.
different frequencies are creating a frequency that is visible to us. So what if the frequency or particles, quote unquote, that are bouncing off are not the things generating the light, but the jiggling of the magnetic field that ultimately results in the visible light.
Yeah, that
But
makes more sense.
Now, I'm not saying that the northern lights create southern lights. I'm only saying that I was only going off of the idea that the atomic bomb created lights on the other side. So
Yeah.
the atomic bomb had some effect that created an effect in the opposite pole of the magnetic field that resulted in
yeah, and those
light.
lights were not seen where the atomic bomb was set off, just on the other
Right, well,
side.
where the atomic bomb was set off, there were lights seen, but they were fucking... they were like ridiculous, blinding fucking lights in probably a vast spectrum.
Yeah.
But the northern lights being created by what you're saying, the northern lights are created by something. I'm not saying that there are lights created on the opposite field or on the opposite side.
Well,
of the
I just
field.
was, since you were connecting it to the northern lights, that made me connect to why the northern lights do that. And I was saying, well, that kind of, that's interesting. Like, basically what I was saying is that there's an excitation of particles that where they go through a vibrational phase where they emit visible light. And so I could see how that is what's happening somehow.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So that you end up with weird purple and blue, beautiful greens and shit like that, like the aurora. And then from what we know, like light is generated by other things vibrating in that visible spectrum, right? So like somehow the atomic bomb going off is resulting in that taking place on these antipodes of each other. That's a really cool idea. I mean, it could be just particles that are already there, because they're not happening up in space like the aurora.
Right. But
So we
think
got
of-
plenty of particles because of the atmosphere.
But think of the idea of induction, like a magnetic field, like the energy of motion of say a material over a magnetic field
Yeah.
creates an electrical pulse or electrical
Yeah.
oscillation of
You're
that
moving
basically
something to disturb the
represents-
field.
Right, but the resulting electrical pulse or electrical current very accurately represents the same energy required to make the motion in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
magnetic field.
Yeah.
So then you can transduce the electrical energy back into that same motion.
Mm-hmm.
Now you might have lost some of that motion due to entropy,
Yeah.
but in a perfect world or a perfect environment, you could
superconductor.
completely recreate the exact motion that created the electrical impulse in the magnetic field using the electric field.
Yeah.
So the idea that the atomic bomb might induce some electrical current or something into the magnetic field that can then be transduced again.
Yeah.
The polar opposite.
Yeah, and the field lines would carry it down there almost losslessly.
Right.
Yeah. It would
And
be
then-
like a superconductor, yeah.
Right. So then perhaps there's something over there that the electromagnetic field is interacting with that produces something visible,
Yeah,
like
something
in the
in the
visible light
atmosphere, yeah.
spectrum.
Yeah, it's exciting the particles of the atmosphere possibly into
Right, exactly.
into making them into.
So it may not look like the northern lights, like it may not be the same color spectrum. It could be more red,
Yeah.
lower energy, whatever. I don't know.
and it'll be lower to the ground and like not up in space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool as fuck. So that made me think of what we were just talking about with the, like passing your hand in front
Oh, yeah.
of your eyes, like in
Yeah.
the dark. How, like, we have, like, because our brain is neurological and there's all these electrical currents going along.
Yeah.
They have magnetic fields, and
Yeah.
the magnetic fields of certain neurological pathways are affecting the fields
Yeah.
of other neurological pathways, and thus when one pathway is being stimulated, you could have induction
Yeah.
into nearby pathways.
Right.
And if you're sort of a materialist thinking that, well, these electrical pathways are my thinking, then it makes sense how certain lines of thought might make you think of other things that may not specifically be related, but could be nearby enough to be
Okay.
induced.
Yeah.
Those electrical pathways could be induced by the fields.
Right.
So, going on that idea, your hand, especially if you use your hands a lot, like for something where you're getting
Like dexterous stuff.
Yeah, you're doing a lot of work with your hands.
Yeah.
They're
And most people are used to focusing a lot of attention in their hands because that's our manipulative digits, right?
right. So you might not be able to see your thigh so much.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a lot of detail.
I know it's there, but it didn't have an image of it. Yeah.
But your hand is like something that you put a
Constantly
lot of
visualize, yeah.
conscious. So you have a lot of neurons there that are firing rapidly and are well developed.
Yeah.
And so you have perhaps more defined field
Yeah.
around the hand, and so moving it or putting it close to your brain
Yeah.
or even someone else's brain.
Right. That's what I was thinking
The
of.
fields
I was,
might interact
Like,
and-
I was causing an induction into your brain, and that's why you're feeling like pressure there.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely possible. And I think that's what he was asking. He was talking about the magnetic field of the body.
Right.
Yeah. So Kyle just gave us a totally materialist, like, script derp explanation.
Yeah. So there's no
It's nothing special.
there's no
there.
spiritual
That's right.
weird shit going on. It's pure
Consciousness is
physics,
pure
like,
illusion. It's
yeah.
it's an epiphenomenon.
And it's purely due to entropy that you can't see the hand clearly when your eyes are closed because some of it's being lost to infrared.
The arrow of time.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on to more stories here of crazy disappearances.
Yeah. Fuck that subject, right?
No, that was good. That was good. Thanks, materialist guy. The disappearance of the Tudor 4. That's a weird name. Tudor 4. It's, yeah.
Yeah, I
okay.
believe you.
Yeah, Tudor 4. That is Tudor. That's and then the number 4. Tudor 4 airliner Star Tiger was 7 months later. Okay, so in the pre-dawn of January 31st, 1948. This is one of the most startling events in the Triangle. The airliner with 29 passengers and crew had left hours earlier from Santa Maria in the Azores, and one of its many fuel stops from London to Havana. Okay, so they were flying from London to Havana in Cuba. They had stopped in the Azores for fuel. So while approaching Bermuda, the pilot, Captain B.W. McMillan, made the expected contact with Kinley Field, his next stopover, requesting a radio bearing to calibrate his navigation and make sure he was still on course. The response indicated the plane was very slightly off course. Its position was corrected after Bermuda relayed a first-class bearing of 72 degrees from the island.
Of course. Yeah.
At this point, the Star Tiger was less than 2 hours away from Bermuda, and it confirmed its ETA at 5 a.m., an hour late due to headwinds. This is the last transmission ever heard from the aircraft. Rescue operations were aided by the fact that the plane's last known position report was precise, placing its disappearance within a very confined track line northeast of Bermuda. In spite of this, no trace of it was ever found, and the search operation was discontinued with negative results. The report issued by the Civil Air Ministry, okay, so since it's a ministry, it's got to be British people, right?
Yeah.
The Civil Air Ministry contains an impressive official recital of what could not have happened to the plane. Quote, there would accordingly appear to be no grounds for supposing that Star Tiger fell into the sea in consequence of having been deprived of her radio, having failed to find her destination, and having exhausted her fuel, unquote. Whatever occurred, it was concluded that it did so extremely rapidly. Quote, there's good reason to suppose that no distress message was transmitted from the aircraft, for there were many radio receiving stations listening on the aircraft's frequencies, and none reported such a message, unquote. Weather information proved the weather was stable. There were no atmospheric disturbances of a serious kind which might cause structural damage to the aircraft, and there were no electrical storms. The aircraft could not have gone off course. After the broadcast bearing from Bermuda, with the winds prevailing, Star Tiger would have been brought to within 30 miles of Bermuda. The aircraft could hardly have failed to find the island in a short time, in the conditions of visibility which prevailed. Engine trouble as a possible cause was ruled out, since at this late stage in her flight, without the added weight of her fuel, she could have flown safely on 3 or even 2 engines instead of the 4 that she had.
Farewell.
The possibility she could lose 3 engines was considered absurd. Faced with all the evidence, the Board of Investigation soberly addressed the loss of Star Tiger in some of the most eloquent language ever entered into any accident report. Quote, in closing this report, it may be truly said that no more baffling problem has ever been presented for investigation. In the complete absence of any reliable evidence as to either the nature or the cause of the accident to Star Tiger, the court has not been able to do more than suggest possibilities, none of which reaches the level even of probability. Into all activities which involve the cooperation of man and machine, 2 elements enter of a very diverse character. There is the incalculable element of the human equation dependent upon imperfectly known factors, and there is the mechanical element subject to quite different laws. A breakdown may occur in either separately or both in conjunction, or some external cause may overwhelm both man and machine. What happened in this case will never be known, and the fate of the Star Tiger must remain an unsolved mystery.
That's pretty pessimistic. It will never be known.
It will never be known.
Yeah. Well. Because we refuse to look at all the possibilities.
That's right. All right.
So we're once again running up on time here. Actually,
Let's just keep going and finish the show.
Oh,
No, I'm joking. Let's go. Yeah, we can run out.
it's not a funny joke.
It was a hilarious joke. It was pretty funny.
Just two.
No, let's take a break.
We could take a break in the grass. Like a couple of snakes.
Snakes. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. It is Brothers of the Serpent podcast. Back now for our final segment, episode 31. Final segment, episode 31, with half our pyramids tied behind our backs just to make it square. That's right, it's all about proportions. All about proportions, not lengths and measurements. It's about proportions and divine numbers, strange happenings with magnetic fields.
Yeah.
That cannot be explained even by materialists.
So the proportions of our show are predominantly kick-ass.
That's right.
With a very small amount of bullshit.
That's right. That's right.
It's all about proportions.
It's
folks.
incredibly precise bullshit, though.
As long as we have the official show observer here, which we don't today, sadly,
Right.
We kicked Brett out. We suspended him because he
In formaldehyde.
Yeah, he found soccer to be more important than Snake Bros.
Yeah.
So we gave him a suspension of one show.
Yeah, he
And-
was like, one of my buddies like rented this entire soccer field for 2 hours, and I was like, dude, do you think that's really like more important than the podcast? Just
Yeah.
because he rented the whole field? Come on.
Russ wanted to be diplomatic and ask questions. I was just like, "You're suspended, dude. Like, it's fucking. This is ridiculous. Like, we're going profesh."
Yeah. Yeah, word on the streets.
So, but the official show observer will be back next episode,
That's right.
and he tried to join us here in the last minute, but
We forgot. We're working on
We had an old computer because the new computer had to go to the store because it's owned by somebody other than Russ, and so it went to the store, and we couldn't even get Brett on the Skype. So it's
the studio computer we're using right now is like, you want me to run two things at once?
yeah. It was like,
I mean, I would be laughing if I could do two things at once.
but seriously, dude, this magnetic field shit, like I'm really fascinated by all of this stuff, and I just want to take a break from. I know you have a huge list of stuff you want to read, and I'm sure everybody out there wants to hear the next fucking
the
story.
next missing plane story.
But I want to interrupt that for a little bit, just to wonder about magnetic fields, just magnetism in general. It's like gravity that we don't really understand it. Like we don't have. When it comes to gravity, we're all standing on a planet that apparently has this field that's holding it all together, right? And we call this gravity. And then with the magnetic field or the magnetic anomaly or whatever you call it, phenomenon, we have you can get like these little chunks of stuff that exhibit this phenomenon.
Yeah.
And you can play with them and you can do stuff with them. And so it's like
you can find alignments in previously molten materials because of the magnetic field.
yeah, it's just that magnetism seems to be something that we can wield, that we can manipulate in some way. But we can't really. We're not really manipulating it. We're utilizing its effect by.
Which can be done without understanding it.
Absolutely, that's my point. But the way we utilize it and the way we quote unquote manipulate it, we're not really manipulating it, but we organize it in such a way using geometry, right?
Mm-hmm.
There, like with an electromagnet, we take an element that is a conductor. And we organize it in such a way, like in a spiral, and that seems to focus the electromagnetic field in some way, and so we can utilize that. We can make an electric motor.
Yeah.
And then
if you look at the different designs of different electric motors, the way they wrap it is different. They'll have different wrap styles that result in different. Like the motor will have more torque but less speed or whatever.
Right, and a lot of that has to do with the frequency of
the 60 cycles a second.
The frequency of cycles that we use in alternating current.
Yeah.
So they will organize an electric motor in such a way with certain coils at different degrees around the circle.
Yeah.
That using a 60 cycle alternating current, you will get pulses from, alternating pulses from.
Yeah, the wraps are designed to be timed with the cycle.
Exactly.
In order to get certain results, yeah.
Yes. Fucking. God damn it. Your brevity is just kicking my ass right now. So, the thing that really just, that I'm wanting to point out is that that we don't really understand magnetism. That's my point, I guess. My ultimate bottom line is that magnetism, even though it is something that we have utilized in a shitload of ways to make things work in a way that we want them to work, we don't understand what it is.
Yeah. Without magnets, we wouldn't have any moving vehicles, no power.
Yeah. And there may be a physicist or a few physicists out there that think they know what it is and that they understand it, and they may very well understand it.
They don't.
But being able to understand it and put that into a textbook that allows everyone else to understand it is obviously not working.
Yeah.
Which is why they spend their entire careers trying to teach about it.
Yeah.
It is not something easily understood. And so for me that was a huge realization that there is this phenomenon that is just blatant and obvious, right in front of our faces every single day, and the core of it, the cause of it, the the inner workings of it are just not understood at all.
Yeah.
And I think that is just wonderful to me.
Well, if
so-
you want to question evolution, you might as well question magnetism, the theory of magnetism. You know, you just like it's like, I mean, you know, stick a magnet to something else and, like, you know, throw yourself out the window with it.
Just throw an amoeba out a window and, like, it doesn't become a monkey, then you fucking obviously, like, don't know evolution. Anyway, moving on.
There isn't a theory of magnetism either, though. Right?
I don't know.
I mean,
don't
how
think
can we
so.
have a theory? Again, the theory has to explain the mechanism, and we don't know what it is.
Right, not an established one. There are countless people who are theorizing about it, but
Theorizing is not the same thing.
yes, that's what I'm trying to point out.
Okay.
They're theorizing about it. They're working up models. They're working up ideas, and not a
would say
single one to
speculating
this
wildly.
day has stood on its own long enough to become an established theory.
Yeah.
However, there is plenty of mathematics that is utilized to determine the effects and
Right.
to
Again, same as
predict the outcome
Right.
of the effect, and those things are correct and accurate, and so it's
Again, that's the same as gravity. We have all this math, and we can really precisely predict the actions of gravity on various objects. Yet we have no theory, and not even close to having a theory.
yeah. So these things about the Bermuda Triangle, after you mentioned this thing with the atomic bomb, like I'd never heard that before, with the atomic bomb creating visible lights
On the antipodes,
on the opposite side of the globe. Totally seems feasible to me due to just my experience with transducers in the studio. Like there's this wire, tiny little wire wrapped around a cylinder, and that cylinder fits perfectly over a magnet that's also a cylinder. And on the top of it is a diaphragm, and when I speak, the vibrations of my voice vibrate that diaphragm, which vibrates that little coil of copper over top of that magnet, and that creates an electrical signal, which is how you are hearing me right now.
Right.
But that electrical signal is not sound.
But that's not how you're hearing me. I do this by direct telepathic communication with the computer.
But yeah, so the computer converts that to ones and zeros, and then when you play it, it takes those ones and zeros and makes
pushes
them
them
back
back
into
out.
an electrical current
Shoves
due to
them back
some
out of a diaphragm.
fucking diodes or some shit, and then that gets amplified back into a coil around a little cylinder that's over top of a cylindrical magnet. And when
That's attached to
when
a
that
diaphragm.
coil
Yeah.
gets electrified, it pulls it to the center of that magnet, and there's a diaphragm on there, which is very large. It's a speaker, and it vibrates, and it makes the same sound as my voice coming out. And
the
that
whole process in reverse.
yeah, it's the exact process in reverse. And this was done with radio in the early days of radio, and in some cases the radios did not require battery. Like you don't need a battery. Like the antenna, that little metal rod that used to stick out of your 80s radio, was what received the disturbances in the electromagnetic field. There was electromagnetic disturbances in space.
The radio station would basically oscillate the existing fields.
Right.
Yeah.
Using wires wrapped in coils.
Yeah, with
and
magnets.
over magnets, and it would just create this disturbance, which was like imagine the world, the air, the atmosphere of the world being a liquid, right? And this liquid, unlike water, the waves propagated extremely rapidly at 186,000 miles per second.
Yeah.
And so if you were able to just vibrate that liquid somewhere, those vibrations would spread out at that speed.
And then somebody with a little antenna stuck into the liquid way far away the antenna would pick up those oscillations. And
Right, some filament that would vibrate due to the vibration of that liquid, that it would pick up that vibration, and then you could then change that vibration, transduce that vibration back into some to whatever the original energy force was. So
Yeah. Yeah, so the original transistor radios, little handheld ones, didn't need batteries because they had a little crystal in there.
yeah.
And the antenna would basically pick up the metal antenna would pick up the oscillations of the radio waves, and it would cause enough induction in the antenna that it could run it down through, and then they could like basically use the crystal to extract that vibration from
Right.
it, and then they could run it into your ear using little tubes, hollow tubes that went to little, basically tiny little megaphones.
Yeah.
And you could listen to it with headphones.
Any metal wire is a radio antenna.
Yeah, which is a problem. What's why insulation is.
So the way you can look at this is that let's say you cut a 2-foot piece of wire, like fence wire, barbed wire. You're holding that barbed wire in your hand. Well, that barbed wire is actually picking up all the radio stations in your area that are vibrating
Yeah.
at a high enough frequency for that thing to pick up, and probably around the rest of the world too. But they would be
there's
so
weak.
quiet.
This is why
but your
people-
local radio stations are being picked up on that antenna. So it is up to you to figure out a way to transduce the energy that's coming into that piece of barbed wire into the like to recreate the actual person speaking or the music playing that was being transduced into the radio frequency to begin with.
Yeah, this is why people with lots of fillings, or sometimes people with plates in their heads, can hear radio out of their fillings or out of the plate. Like,
Right.
There's been reports of this. Like some guy was in the war and in Vietnam, and he was near an exploding, like a mine or whatever, and he has this metal plate in his head. And every once in a while, like usually at night, because at nighttime the radio waves travel much better because the sun's not interfering.
Right.
And so at night the guy starts picking up radio stations and he can hear them.
And the reason the
Coming
sun
out of
is
the plate
interfering is because of its electromagnetic.
Yeah. Or people that have like
Shit.
tons of fillings in their teeth can also, like, radio will start playing out of their mouth.
Right, which is very interesting. So the idea that I'm going on right now is like in the Cold War, like this, the time where like cryptography was like a huge thing.
Yeah.
How to hide the signal that you're sending. How to scramble it so
Yeah.
that it could not be interpreted.
Yeah.
So you
began in World War II, but then it got really ramped up in Cold War. Yeah.
Yeah, so figuring out ways to transduce it and oscillate those vibrations with other vibrations in such a way that it was just so complex, it would be very difficult to perceive. Well, our FM or AM stations that are local, they don't do that.
Yeah.
But imagine you have this wire in your hand and you were going to try to receive it. You would still need to know the equipment that they used and how they oscillate it. So AM is amplitude modulation.
Yeah.
And
Frequency
FM is
modulation.
frequency modulation. So they're amplitude modulation. They're modulating the actual volume, the energy outputs of the wave. So if the wave was, say, like at 5, they're modulating that from, say the wave was 5 to -5 or whatever. They modulate that frequency so that it jumps up to 25 and back down to
Right. And that
whatever.
would generate the.
Right. So you take out the wave that goes from 5 to -5, and you get the information that is beyond and above that amplitude. It's the same thing with the frequency. If the frequency of the carrier wave is 20 megahertz or whatever it is.
Yeah. Then you go up and down with the frequency. You can keep the power level, the amplitude, the same.
Right. And you take the base frequency out,
Yeah.
and you get all of the information that is oscillated or modulated into the wave.
Yeah. That's why.
And that seems easy, but like
It's not.
But like
you have to know which one it is.
right.
for it to work.
So they were trying to encrypt these transmissions they were doing over radio and encrypting them using modulations, like very complex waveform modulations
Yeah.
of amplitude and frequency,
Yeah.
to try to scramble the information that they're passing through those waves. And so we had people here trying to like discover what their modulations were
Yeah.
and decrypt it.
Right.
And that's just fucking badass.
Yeah,
I don't know.
so this is why AM can travel, like you can be listening to an AM station while you're traveling, while you're driving or whatever, and it will begin to fade out and fade in and fade out and fade in, but you can pick it up faintly. I mean, even with lots of static, and it'll get those interesting like it gets all these weird interference, but you can hear it for a long way, whereas FM kind of has this sharp drop off. And the difference of that, where AM will spread way out and get fainter and fainter and fainter and fainter, and like you can still, and there may be even weird pockets where like you haven't heard anything from that AM station for 30 minutes, and suddenly for a little while you pick it up real clearly again and it disappears, because they're modulating the amplitude, but the frequency remains the same. But because it's an amplitude modulation, you're getting
the louder,
the power,
the louder noises.
Yeah, and the power fluctuation and everything. But the FM is modulating the frequency, but the power remains the same. So you hear it, and then you stop hearing it.
Yeah, you're driving along, and it's like, well, perfectly clear, and then
that's it. It's gone. And what you were saying about how they've been trying to do these different types of modulations at the end of World War II, they had come up with one. I thought this is hilarious because I was like, they needed a DJ. They would do this thing where the two people want to communicate, and they're going to communicate through radio or whatever. So each one would go into a specialized booth, and they each had phonograph record players with the exact same record of some complex symphony or whatever, and they would start them at the same time and then put that into the wave, so that if you didn't know,
oh my god, that's fucking great.
Yeah, but of course they had to have a DJ there, fucking keeping those things timed perfectly, because of course they don't ever stay perfectly. So people would be talking, but you're listening to the other guy talking because the records start to get a little bit out of phase, And you've got engineers in there trying to keep them in phase, but they don't know what they're doing because they're not fucking DJs. So like it was very difficult, and it was all analog, being controlled by humans. But yeah, that was one of the first attempts at that frequency modulation for encryption.
That's really
and the records operated as what's called a one-time pad. Like after you've used that record for one communication, they would throw them away and they'd get something totally different each time, so that it couldn't be picked up on and figured out.
Yeah, that's so fucking cool. So there's all these different ways that we used to do encryption, which was live, right?
Yeah.
And now encryption has moved on to like it started out as like a way to do encryption live, like using like some constant thing to scramble.
When you're talking about radio, yeah. I mean, there's been encryption in written text.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Yeah.
Moving on.
No, we don't have to move on.
Well, I mean, I was going to just to point out, like with internet encryption now, it's like it's totally different in a form that I can't really grasp.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, so the same thing is happening in internet. Like if you want to connect to somebody and do face-to-face or FaceTime or Skype, and that needs to be, and you want to encrypt that, it would be the same.
Right.
Try to live.
I meant like. Binary code, like the written code type of encryption. That's something that I can't really grasp. Like like what you were talking about, written code.
Yeah. Okay.
That type of shit. Like I don't, for some reason, like I don't understand programming. Like I understand binary to a certain level. Like I can get how the numbers work.
Right.
And I got so far as understanding like hexadecimal and just like how you can like with working with music, it's very simple in the MIDI form, because we got this MIDI format that uses the like a certain bit rate, and then there's 127 different settings within that, and all that kind of shit.
Which is really 128, but it starts at 0.
Yeah, 0, that's right. 128. My bad. It's 128. I'm dumb.
It starts at 0. 0 is 1.
Yeah, the knob just goes from 0 to 127. but that was all based on this hexadecimal code.
Yeah.
That's a simpler way of representing binary.
Yeah. And binary is kind of easy to understand if you think of a computer as an enormous series of switches, because that's really when you get right down to it, a computer is composed of trillions of switches.
Yeah.
And every switch has two positions, on and off, 1 and 0, and so that's why binary code is the base machine code, because everything in that computer is either on or off, and so it's a shitload of 1s and 0s. Yeah.
And that makes sense, right? Yeah. That's kind of easy to understand to a certain degree. And
once you start,
when it goes
how do I take a million switches and turn that into a video game?
And so they create these like coding languages like C++ or whatever, where they're writing all this weird shit, and I'm just like, I don't fucking know. I just don't get it. I can understand the concept, but I can't really dive into it in the same way that I can with this type of encryption that's over like transduction of waves or whatever. For some reason, I can grasp that physically.
Yeah.
There's some physical, but like even in the newspaper, like back in the day, you know the what was
codes,
what was the
I don't
little
know what it's
newspaper
called.
thing? The crypto something.
Yeah.
Whatever it was. CryptoQuip.
Yeah, CryptoQuip. Yeah.
I sucked at that shit. Like I'm not good at that.
That's decryption. In other words, you start with nothing and you have to figure out using context or that's a completely different thing from encryption itself. I think you can think of it when you're talking about text encryption. It's the same thing. What you're doing is you're overlaying a bunch of different information that's random, hopefully, on top of you're kind of adding it to the message that you want to send. You're laying this other information on top of it and using that information to modify the message you're going to send. It's just happening in text.
Right. So I know we're like getting near the end of the show here, but I like with this encryption thing, crop circles.
Oh yeah.
Like I've thought about crop circles being a type of encryption of some, like, let's say that
I see where you're going.
that the whatever forces are being used to move the crops, or what they need is some very regular pixels, almost like pixels, like the crops are like pixels, right? They need to be able to manipulate these pixels in such a way that to create something visible.
Favorable result.
And so you could use certain forces, like what you've told me about the crop circles and how like some of the crops have been bent in certain ways, and there's heat involved. There's all this kind of weird shit. I can imagine ways to induce that type of energy in waves or in like propagation of energy in certain ways, like through transmission through the ether.
Okay.
In some way, right?
Yeah, I see where you're going with that. And so you're suggesting that like the images are, if we could decode them, what you need to do is remove some information from them, and then it would result in a message. Is that what you're talking? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Yeah. That's cool.
So they're a type of transmission.
Yeah.
That could be, and I'm just using crop circles as an example of a way to pass information over long distances. Like if you had it, we think right now like, well, speed of light travel is the only way we could communicate with something far away. Yeah. Well, there might be other ways. Like, well, okay, now we're getting into like quantum not trapping, but
I was just connecting this with the electromagnetic field, having something happen at the antipode.
Yeah, there you go.
So like we know that there are huge electromagnetic fields. Like so, I could be an alien.
Oh shit! Yeah.
I could be an alien on the opposite side of the solar system from the Earth, and manipulate something there, and a crop circle appears on Earth because it's the antipode of the electromagnetic field of the solar system.
So if you were able to detect certain things like that, you might be able to manipulate it or oscillate it in some way on your side to create the opposite on the other side. I was thinking of what is the thing where they have two objects that do the exact same thing? It's twins. Entanglement. Fucking it.
Yeah.
I say quantum trapping. What am I thinking?
Because I thought of
quantum entanglement.
Yeah, I thought of trapping earlier because we're talking about magnets. I was like, people, if you want to see something weird with magnetism, go look at quantum trapping. Because that's where you get the super cool thing, and they can tilt it and it stays that way.
Yeah.
You know, or they turn it. It's weird. It's this disc.
Yeah, and
they can turn it and it stays.
They need it like so fucking cold, like near absolute zero or whatever, as close as they can get.
So that the molecules aren't vibrating, because that causes when the magnetic fields pass through the object,
they stay right where they are.
They want to stay exactly where they are because of quantum trapping, because the thing isn't moving enough for them to shift through it.
See, that's the thing that I'm trying to say, is that kind of shit makes sense to me when I watch those videos and stuff. It makes sense. These ideas about like transduction, radio transmissions, and encrypting radio transmissions all make sense to me.
Yeah.
But the written type, going back to like dyslexia somehow, the
Yeah.
written type of shit.
Don't let a dyslexic guy encode your message.
Yeah, fuck that.
Because it'll never. Yeah, it'll never work.
It just doesn't make sense. Like I don't know, man.
Well, you know, in World War II, they had this problem, like, because you've got people that make excellent, like, submarine captains who aren't necessarily going to be good at encrypting, right? And yet you need to be able to communicate with your U-boats to tell them to go blow up those fucking Allied ships, right?
Yeah.
So they would make these machines. And this is like the advent of, like, machine coding. So this guy invented this thing, like, in the Allies called it the Enigma, obviously, for obvious reasons, right? And basically you could sit down and they use the date, the current date, and you kind of set that in there. It's got a bunch of dials and you'd set the date in there and then you kind of crank the thing and it would generate your code. So I don't know if I'm interrupting a point you were trying to make, but
No.
the Enigma machine, what's fascinating to me about the Enigma machine is some crazy mathematician, and this did like literally drive him insane. But I think he's a fucking hero because you imagine, like, so what, you know, he's a mathematician, he's a pencil neck, right? What is he going to do for the war effort? He can't get out there on the front lines and, I mean, he could get out there on the front lines and run at the Germans and get killed, right? But instead, he, based on intercepted messages that were encrypted. So, like, we had antennas up and we're picking up these transmissions that we know the Germans are talking to the U-boats, but what we're getting is this gibberish, right?
Yeah.
This guy sat down with pages and pages of those intercepts. And from those intercepts, which were just pages of gibberish, letters that made no sense whatsoever, he fucking built an Enigma machine. By reverse engineering it by looking at the gibberish.
Yeah. There's
That's
a movie about that.
Fucking awesome.
There's a movie about that.
Yeah.
Actually. Like,
Yeah.
that's fucking crazy shit, dude.
Yeah, that's where we get Alan Turing. So Alan Turing was the version with the British. He worked at a place called Bletchley Park, where they had this whole operation set up, where the intercepts would come in, and they would process them, and they would spread them all out, and they would go through and it's all people. We didn't have computers, right? But Alan Turing, who was working in this process, ends up inventing a computer because he needs, like, while he's doing these things, he's like, if I only had a machine like the Enigma machine or whatever, like, or a card reader where they, you know, you got these punch cards, they got these big heavy cards and they would punch holes in them, and you would feed that into the machine, and eventually the cards became long strips that were in big reels, right? So you got this enormous reel of paper, you'd set it up on the machine and it's got all these holes punched in it, and you would run that reel through the machine and it would read those holes as ones and zeros, and it would be able to do an operation. But of course you can't change the holes in the paper, so you can't reprogram the machine on the fly. Or the paper itself, like, in other words, the software that was existing on the reel could not reprogram itself based on, right? So whatever it was crunching. And the other thing is, like, they started to build the machines better and faster and bigger to the point to where it would burn the paper when it was running it through it because it's trying to do it too fast and the paper would catch on fire. So Alan Turing is like, God damn it, I need one that has malleable memory, like where the paper itself, I can punch new holes or erase old holes. Like, how do you even erase a hole? I mean, so he comes up with this fucking, this is just, I love this. He makes this series of two, so he gets PVC pipe, right? like a long stretch of PVC pipe straight, and then he kind of bends it up so that the pipe is this, like, long curve, right? And at the either ends of it, he puts speakers, little speakers in there, right? So the speaker on the left side of the pipe can go bwing, and on the right, bwing, and then he puts mercury down in the middle, so that the speakers can make the mercury move up and down in the pipe, and then he puts contacts down at the bottom so that it can rewrite itself. And he's got this room full of these pipes and all these speakers, and when everybody had to wear ear protections when they turned it on because it was like making all this
He's
fucking
using
noise.
cymatics.
Yeah, and he's making the mercury move back and forth, rewriting the ones and zeros as he goes on the fly. This is the first computer.
That's fucking badass.
Fucking badass. Like, that's genius. That's right. So that's it, ladies and gentlemen, for this unplugged version of Brothers of the Serpent podcast. We thank you all very much for listening to this unplugged version. We're totally not using any electronics whatsoever. We don't even have a computer over there. It's just some guy writing a bunch of ones and zeros and punching holes in cards. So, you can get a hold of us by going to our blog at brothersoftheserpent.blogspot.com. You can send us comments there. You can look at the pictures. You can read the descriptions. And we're getting a
tag cloud there. I'm gonna build this tag cloud that's badass. You can kind of rotate it around and look at all the different tags.
Fuck yeah.
You can email us at brothersoftheserpent@gmail.com. Send us any comments you want us in the topics. Like, dude, we love it when you guys send us topics to talk about. We will, if we know anything about them, talk about them, and we will talk about them even if we don't know anything about them. And thanks to Kyle very much for all the music and the hard work he does on the audio. Thanks to Ty for his contributions to the music. Thanks to Smith Sonic Studios, Arcade Productions, Arcade Enterprises, Arcade Productions. Do we have
Yeah,
those?
yeah, fuck yeah.
AWAX Productions, Aethrum Studios. And thanks to Laura for the intros, which we will get back on those, baby, I promise. I'm gonna put them back in there. And thanks to all you listeners. Good night, Adamu. Get back to work.